The billionaire's dangerous obsession. She was invisible until he saw her. She walked into that gala in a borrowed dress and scuffed heels, thinking she'd slip out before anyone noticed the line cook pretending to belong. 3 hours later, she was dancing in the arms of the most feared man in the city, and somewhere in the dark, a rival was already loading a gun with her name on it. If you want to know how a woman nobody looked at became the one woman a dangerous man would burn the world for, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button, and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. The dress didn't fit right across the shoulders, and Lena Ward knew it the second she stepped out of the cab. She tugged at the strap, felt the satin slide against skin that hadn't seen sunlight in weeks, and tried to remember how to breathe like a person who belonged somewhere. The Halston building rose up in front of her like something cut out of a magazine, 40 stories of black glass and gold trim, and the line of people moving toward its revolving doors looked like they'd all been assembled in the same factory. Tuxedos. Diamonds. Teeth so white they caught the streetlight. Lena's heels were scuffed at the back. She'd tried to cover it with a black marker in the cab, and now her fingers smelled faintly like Sharpie. "You getting out or what?" The driver's voice snapped her back. She fumbled with her clutch, counted out $42 in crumpled bills and change, and handed it through the plexiglass. "Keep it," she said, because that was what people said in movies when they wanted to feel bigger than they were. The cabbie just grunted. $42 wasn't a tip. It was a transaction, and they both knew it. She stepped onto the curb, and the cold February air hit her bare arms like a slap. Across the street, a woman in emerald silk was laughing at something a bald man in wire-rimmed glasses had said. The woman's laugh was the kind that got taught somewhere, Lena thought. Finishing schools, maybe? Or the front row of an opera. Lena's own laugh, the few times anyone had made her use it in the last 6 months, came out sounding like somebody had stepped on a cat. Invitation? The doorman at the top of the marble steps was built like a refrigerator in a bow tie. Lena dug into her clutch and pulled out the stiff cream-colored card Chef Marco had pressed into her hand yesterday afternoon, right after he'd told her she needed to stop looking like a ghost in his kitchen. "Go," he'd said, in that thick Neapolitan accent that made every command sound like a prayer. "You cook for these people 3 nights a week. Tonight, you eat with them. You drink. You dance. You remember you are alive." She hadn't told him she didn't remember how. The doorman studied the invitation, then studied her face, then looked at the invitation again. "Ms. Ward?" "That's me." His eyebrow moved 1/4 inch. Just enough to tell her that no, actually, in his professional opinion, she was not Ms. Ward, or if she was, then Ms. Ward had made a grievous error coming here tonight. But he stepped aside anyway, because his job was to check the card, not the person holding it. "Coat check is to your left, ma'am." "I didn't bring a coat." He didn't answer. She walked past him. The ballroom opened up in front of her like a wound. That was the word that came into her head, and she hated herself a little for it, because it was the kind of thing Noah would have said back when she'd loved him. Noah had been a poet, or so he'd claimed. Noah had also been sleeping with a barista named Rachel for 7 months, while Lena paid the rent and made him lentil soup when he had his migraines. "Don't," she told herself. "Not tonight." A chandelier the size of a Buick hung from the ceiling, and under it, maybe 300 people moved through the light like fish in an aquarium. String quartet in the corner, ice sculptures that looked like swans, or possibly herons, she wasn't sure. A whole wall of windows showing the city spread out below them, a grid of yellow and white that stretched all the way to the black smear of the harbor. Lena took a glass of champagne off a passing tray because her hands needed something to do, and she stood against the wall and tried to look like a person who was waiting for someone, rather than a person who had nowhere to go. The champagne tasted like apples and regret. She'd come, she told herself, because Marco was right. 6 months of crying in the walk-in freezer. 6 months of coming home to an apartment that still smelled faintly like Noah's clove cigarettes, even though she'd scrubbed every surface with bleach the day after he left. 6 months of her mother calling from Pittsburgh and asking, in that gentle, wounded way she had, whether Lena was eating enough, whether she was sleeping, whether she had thought about coming home for a little while, just until she felt like herself again. The problem was Lena wasn't sure which self she was supposed to feel like. She took another sip of champagne, watched the room. At the far end, near a set of tall French doors, A cluster of men in black tuxedos had formed a loose circle around someone she couldn't quite see. The men were all doing the thing that important men did when they talked to someone more important than them, nodding too much, laughing a beat too early, holding their drinks like they'd forgotten about them. Lena couldn't see the person in the middle, just the backs of other people's heads. "You're new." The voice came from her left. Lena turned, startled, and found a woman about her own age looking at her with frank, unblinking interest. Short black hair, red lipstick, a dress that probably cost more than Lena's rent. "I'm sorry?" "I've been coming to these things for 4 years," the woman said. "I know every face that matters, and about 80% of the ones that don't." "You're new." Lena started. "I'm a cook at Marco's on Pearl Street." "Ah." The woman smiled. It was not an unkind smile exactly, but it was the smile of someone who had just solved a small mystery and moved on. "Marco sent you. He does that sometimes. Sweet man." "Right. I'm Daphne." "Lena." Daphne lifted her glass and a little toast, then drifted away toward someone who apparently mattered more, leaving Lena alone against the wall again. Lena watched her go and felt the old, familiar thing climb up the back of her throat. The thing that told her she was taking up space she hadn't paid for. The thing that had followed her around since she was 12 years old in a hand-me-down coat at a school she couldn't afford. "You are a line cook," the thing whispered. "You are wearing a dress you borrowed from a waitress. You have $93 in your checking account. Go home." She set the champagne glass down on a side table and turned toward the door. That was when it happened. She didn't see the server coming. That was the honest truth of it. She turned, and he turned, and his silver tray with its neat constellation of crystal flutes turned too, and then everything was happening at once. Champagne in an arc through the air. A woman shrieking somewhere behind her. Someone saying, "Oh God," in a voice that was somehow both bored and appalled. The sound of glass hitting marble. Not shattering exactly, but that ugly skating sound glass makes when it's about to. Lena caught the tray. She didn't think about it. Her hands just went. 12 years in kitchens had given her some kind of muscle memory she didn't even know she had, and her left hand shot out and pinned the tray against the server's chest while her right hand closed around the neck of the flute that was closest to going over. 2 glasses still tipped. Champagne splashed down the front of her dress, cold as river water, and soaked through to the skin underneath. The room, she realized, had gone quiet. Not completely quiet. The quartet kept playing, but the nearest 50 people had all turned their heads, and Lena was standing there in a wet dress with her hand on a stranger's chest and champagne dripping off her elbow. "I'm sorry," she said. Too loud. "I'm so sorry. I didn't—" "Ma'am." The server was maybe 19, red-haired, terrified. "Ma'am, please, it's my fault. I should have—" "No, I turned. I didn't look." It's fine, please." Someone laughed. A light, bright, knife-edged laugh from somewhere off to her right. Lena felt her face go hot. And then, through the little crowd that had gathered, she felt something else. Eyes. She had always been sensitive to it, the particular weight of being looked at, and this was different from the embarrassed glances of the people nearest her. This was steadier, heavier. It was the feeling of being seen from a long way off by someone who had stopped what they were doing to watch. She looked up. The man was standing maybe 30 feet away, at the edge of the cluster she'd noticed before, the one she hadn't been able to see into. He was tall, black tuxedo cut so precisely it looked less like a suit and more like a second skin. Dark hair, a little longer than fashion would have dictated, swept back from a face that wasn't handsome, exactly. Handsome was too small a word for it. It was a face that had been built on purpose. Strong jaw, a small white scar running through the dark of his left eyebrow. Eyes that were the color of something underwater. He was looking at her. Not at the mess. Not at the server. At her. Lena's hand was still on the server's chest. She pulled it back like she'd touched a stove. "Let me," the server began, reaching for the tray, and Lena gave it to him, and she looked down at her dress and saw the dark spreading stain across her ribs, and she thought, very clearly and calmly, "I need to leave right now." She turned. She took 2 steps toward the door, and then a voice, not loud, not raised, just placed, the way a good chef places a plate, said, from somewhere behind her, "Don't." She stopped. She shouldn't have. That was the thing she would think about later, in the long hours of the early morning, staring at the ceiling of her apartment. She had no reason in the world to stop walking. And yet she did. The voice had landed on her shoulder like a hand, and her feet had simply refused to take another step. When she turned, he was closer than he should have been. He'd crossed half the distance between them while she was still deciding, and now he was 5 feet away, and up close he was worse. Or better. She couldn't tell. Everything about him was precise and contained, as though he'd been assembled by someone who had read a book on how humans worked and gotten every detail exactly right, without ever actually meeting one. "It wasn't your fault," he said. His voice was quiet. She had to lean a little to hear him, and she hated that her body leaned without asking her first. "I wasn't looking," she said. "Neither was he. But he'll be told it was his, and he'll apologize to the manager, and he'll still have his job in the morning." A small, almost invisible smile. "I'll see to it." "I'm sorry?" "The boy." He nodded toward the server, who had already vanished into the back of the room with his tray. "He's worried he'll be fired." "He won't be. You have my word." "You—" Lena blinked. "You don't work here." "No." "Then how—" "Because I said so." There was no arrogance in it. He said it the way another man might say, "because it's Tuesday." "May I ask your name?" She should have lied. She thought about it, a half-second of calculation, the way you might think about taking a different route home through a neighborhood where something had happened to you once. But the eyes, the color of water under ice, were waiting, and Lena Ward had never been very good at lying to people who waited. "Lena." "Lena what?" "Ward. Adrian Voss." He said it the way you'd tell someone your room number at a hotel, factual. But somewhere in her peripheral vision, Lena saw Daphne, the red lipstick, turn sharply and then turn back. And she saw two of the men who had been in the circle around him step casually into new positions. And she saw a woman near the bar freeze with her drink halfway to her mouth. And Lena, who had spent 12 years chopping onions in kitchens and reading tabloids in her apartment and overhearing other line cooks gossip about the people whose food they made. Lena knew that name. She just hadn't put it together with a face before. Voss. The Voss Group. The tower 6 blocks from here that had his name in brass over the door. The half-paragraph article in the business section last spring about a Senate subcommittee that had wanted to ask him questions and then, very suddenly, had not. The thing Marco had said once, very quietly, when a party of 4 had sat down at table 9 without a reservation and been given table 9 anyway. Some people you say no to, and some people you do not. The ones you do not, God made them that way for a reason. Marco had crossed himself when he said it. Lena's mouth had gone dry. "Mr. Voss?" "Adrian." "I should probably— my dress—" "Your dress is fine. Come with me." What?" He held out a hand. Just that. An open hand, the fingers long and unhurried. There was a thin gold band on the ring finger of his right hand, but nothing on the left. His cufflinks were black stones she couldn't name. "Come with me," he said again. "We'll find something dry, and then you'll dance with me." "I can't dance." "You can tonight." And that was the line, she would think later. That was the line right there. "You can tonight. Not you'll learn, not I'll teach you, not don't worry about it. Just a quiet, absolute statement of fact about what she could and couldn't do, issued by a man who had apparently decided she could do it. She put her hand in his. His skin was warm. That surprised her. She had expected something colder. Well, he led her out of the ballroom without looking back once. Lena looked back. She saw the little crowd parting for them, Daphne's eyes enormous over the rim of her glass. A silver-haired man in a tuxedo murmuring something urgent to a blonde woman who was already reaching for her phone. The string quartet played on, oblivious. They went down a corridor lined with portraits of people who had died before Lena's grandmother was born. Adrian didn't speak. His hand was light on hers, just enough pressure to guide, not enough to pull. She could have let go any time. She didn't. A woman appeared at the end of the corridor as though she'd been summoned. Gray suit, gray hair, a small earpiece almost hidden behind her left ear. She looked at Adrian, nodded once, and opened a door that Lena hadn't even noticed was there. "Mr. Voss." "Marta, Ms. Ward needs something to wear. Her dress was damaged." "Yes, sir." and find the server who dropped the tray. Tell Henrik he is not to be let go. If he is let go, Henrik is let go. Clear? Very clear, sir. The woman named Marta gave Lena a small professional smile, the kind that did not extend above the cheekbones, and then she gestured Lena into the room. Adrian let go of her hand. I'll wait, he said. The room was a small private lounge, all cream leather and low lamps, and on a rack along the far wall there were, Lena counted, 11 dresses in a neat row, in a range of sizes, all with the tags still on them. These are, Lena said, and then couldn't finish the sentence. For evenings, when guests have accidents, Marta said politely. It happens. How often does it happen? Often enough for a closet. Marta selected a dress in deep navy, simple, knee-length, cut for someone Lena's size, and hung it on a hook by the mirror. Then she stepped back and folded her hands in front of her. Take your time, Miss Ward. Can I ask you something? Of course. Who is he? Marta's expression did not change. He's Mr. Voss. That's not what I'm asking. I know what you're asking, Ms. Ward. Marta paused. It was a small pause, barely a pause at all. But Lena caught it because Lena had spent her whole life listening for the spaces in other people's sentences. He is a man who, when he notices someone, tends to keep noticing. That is the most useful thing I can tell you tonight. Is that a warning? No. A small, almost wistful smile. It's a fact. Warnings are for people who still have a choice. Marta slipped out of the room. The door closed behind her with a click that felt, Lena thought, very final. Lena looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair had come loose on one side. Her mascara had not entirely survived the champagne. Her ribs showed a little through the damp silk of the borrowed dress. And for a second she saw herself the way her mother had seen her at 23, fresh out of culinary school and full of a kind of stubborn hope that Pittsburgh had never quite managed to kill. The woman in the mirror was thinner now, tireder, but the eyes were still the same. You can still walk out, the mirror woman said. You can put your own dress back on, ruined or not, and you can go out the front door, and you can get in a cab, and you can go home. Nobody will stop you. But Marta had said it. Warnings are for people who still have a choice. Lena unzipped the borrowed dress and let it fall. When she stepped back into the corridor, he was standing with his back to her, one hand in his pocket, looking at a painting she couldn't see. He turned the instant her heels touched the marble, and something flickered behind his eyes that Lena was afraid to name. Better? He said. The dress fits. It should. Marta's very good at her job. She told me you notice people. Did she? Was she wrong? He considered that for a long moment. Then he stepped toward her, slowly, and he reached up and, without asking, tucked a strand of her hair back behind her ear. His fingers were warm again. They did not linger. She was not wrong, he said, but she didn't tell you the important part, which is that I don't usually notice anyone. She didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. He smiled, very small. Dance with me. Mr. Voss, Adrian. I really don't. One song. Why? The question came out harder than she meant. It surprised her, and it seemed to surprise him too, a flicker of something in his face, quickly controlled. He looked at her for what felt like a long time. She made herself look back. Because, he said finally, when you caught that tray, you moved like someone who has spent her whole life catching things other people drop. And I would like to know what it feels like to dance with a woman like that. Once. And then, if you want to leave, I'll have a car put you anywhere in the city you'd like to go, and we can both go back to our lives, and you'll have a story for the other cooks tomorrow morning. How do you know I'm a cook? He didn't answer. Mr. Voss, how do you know? Your knuckles, he said. The burn on the inside of your left wrist, the callus on the pad of your thumb, the way you held the tray. One song, Lena. The ballroom was still the ballroom. The quartet had moved on to something slower now, a waltz she half recognized, the strings sighing over the low rumble of 300 people pretending not to watch her walk back in on the arm of Adrian Voss. She could feel every eye in the room. She could feel Daphne's, sharpest of all. Adrian led her to the open space at the center of the floor, and he turned and he put his right hand on her waist, very lightly, and he took her right hand in his left, and he held her not close exactly, but not far either. The proper distance. The distance of a man who knew the rules and was choosing which ones to follow. I really don't know how to do this. Look at me. She looked up. She looked up close. In this light, the scar through his eyebrow was a tiny white line, no wider than a thread. The eyes were not actually the color of water under ice. They were darker than that. Gray, she thought. A gray that had something gold inside it, very deep down. Now step back with your right foot when I step forward with my left. She stepped. He stepped. They moved. It was not graceful. Lena missed the first turn and half crushed his foot at the second, and he did not flinch, and he did not correct her, and he did not look at anyone else in the room. He looked at her. Only at her. And slowly, as the quartet worked through the long middle of the waltz, Lena felt her body stop fighting her. Stop fighting him. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. Her breathing found his. Something in her chest, something that had been held tight for 6 months of crying in walk-in freezers, loosened just enough to hurt. "Tell me something true," he said, very quietly, near her ear. "Like what?" "Anything. The first true thing that comes into your head." She closed her eyes for one beat of the music. Then she opened them. "My boyfriend left me in August," she said. "I came home from a double shift and his clothes were gone, and the only thing he'd left behind was a note that said he'd outgrown me. I still have the note. I read it sometimes." "Why?" "Because I want to know which part of me he outgrew, so I can cut it out." Adrian's hand on her waist did not tighten. It did not move. But something changed in him anyway. A minute shift, like a door closing somewhere deep inside a very large house. "Nothing about you needs cutting out," he said. "You don't know me." "I know enough." "You don't know anything, Mr. Voss." "Adrian." "You don't know anything, Adrian." The song was ending. The violinist was drawing out the last long note, and the room around them was starting to breathe again, and Lena realized with a strange, far-off clarity that she did not want the song to end. She wanted the floor to keep turning. She wanted the eyes, the color of gray-gold water, to keep looking at her like she was the only woman in the room, instead of the only woman who didn't belong in it. Adrian slowed, stopped, did not let her go. "I know," he said quietly, "that you borrowed that dress from a woman named Keisha, who waits tables at Marco's, and who is 2 inches shorter than you. I know your mother lives on Beachview Avenue in Pittsburgh and calls you every Sunday at 7 and worries that you're not sleeping. I know that you graduated 3rd in your class from the Paul Dumont School of Culinary Arts in 2021, and that your final dish was a bouillabaisse your instructor said was the best he'd tasted in 11 years. I know that you have $93 in your checking account tonight, and I know that when you walked through the door 2 hours ago, you intended to leave before anyone noticed you." Lena could not feel her hands. She could not feel her hands, and she could not feel her feet. And somewhere, a long way away, the quartet was starting a new piece, and people were talking again, and a waiter with a tray was passing behind her, and none of it was real. Only his voice was real, and the thin gold band on his right hand and the hand at her waist that had not moved. "How?" she said. Her voice did not sound like her own. "How do you know any of that?" "I had an hour," Adrian said, "between the moment you caught the tray and the moment you put your hand in mine." "An hour. And people who work very fast." "Why?" "Because I wanted to know who you were before I asked you to dance." "Mr. Voss." "Adrian." "Adrian." She pulled back. Not far. Just enough that his hand slid to her elbow and then fell away. "That is not a normal thing to do." "No? That is not—" "I know." "Then why—" He looked at her. In the chandelier light, his eyes had gone almost black, and the small white scar through his eyebrow was the only pale thing in his face. "Because in a room of 300 people," he said, "you were the only one I saw, and I did not want to lose you in the crowd before I understood why." Well, she left the gala at 11:42. She remembered the exact time because when she stepped out onto the marble steps, the clock in the lobby had just struck 3/4 past the hour, and a black car was already waiting at the curb, and the driver was already stepping out to open the back door for her. I didn't call a car, Lena said. No, ma'am, the driver said. Mr. Voss did. She stood at the top of the steps in the borrowed dress she hadn't given back, and the navy one she was still wearing instead, and she looked at the car, and she looked over her shoulder at the revolving doors, and somewhere on the other side of those doors was a man who had looked at her for the first time in her adult life, like she was something worth stopping traffic for. Marta had been wrong, Lena thought. Marta had said that warnings were for people who still had a choice. But standing on those marble steps in a February wind that cut straight through borrowed silk, Lena understood that the warning and the choice were the same thing. You got warned so that later, when you'd already chosen, you couldn't say you hadn't been told. She got in the car. The inside smelled like leather and something faintly like pine, and there was a bottle of water in a small silver holder by the door, and on the seat beside her was a card, folded once, cream-colored, with 2 lines written on it in a hand so careful it had to have been slow. Dinner tomorrow, 8 o'clock. I'll send the car. No signature. It didn't need one. Lena read it twice. Then she folded it back up and held it against her ribs where her dress had been wet an hour ago, and the car pulled out into traffic, and the city slid past the windows the way cities do when you're being driven instead of driving. And she realized that she had not, in the last 3 hours, thought about Noah even once. Not once. Bam. Her apartment was on the 4th floor of a walk-up in a part of the city where the heat didn't always work, and the man in 3B played country music at 2 in the morning. She let herself in at 12:15. She closed the door and leaned against it with her eyes shut, and she stood there for a long time. The phone in her clutch buzzed. She pulled it out. An unknown number. A text. You got home safely. Not a question, a statement, a man confirming a thing he already knew. Lena stared at the screen. A long minute, a longer one. Then she typed, with fingers that were not quite steady. How did you get this number? The little dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. The same way I got everything else. She set the phone down on the kitchen counter, face up, and she stood there and watched it as though it might do something, and the screen went dark after 30 seconds, and then it stayed dark. She walked to the window. The city below her was the same city it had been that morning. The same lights, the same sirens, the same yellow cab pulling around the corner of her block for the 3rd time tonight because the driver was lost or bored or both. Nothing had changed. Nothing had changed except that somewhere in this city, in a building with his name in brass over the door, a man she hadn't known existed 3 hours ago was sitting up, probably, with a phone in his hand, waiting to see whether she would text him back. Lena Ward stood at her window in a stolen navy dress. She thought about her mother's voice on Sundays at 7. She thought about the note Noah had left in the drawer of her bedside table, the one she read sometimes to feel the hurt get smaller. She thought about the $93 in her checking account, and about Marco saying, "Remember you are alive," and about the way Adrian Voss had said you can tonight. Across the air shaft, the man in 3B turned his music up. A woman was singing about a train that wasn't coming back. Lena closed the curtain. She did not text him back that night, but she did not delete the message either. And in the morning, when she woke up at 5:30 for her shift at Marco's, the card was still on her kitchen counter where she'd left it, and the phone was still there beside it, face up, screen dark, waiting. She looked at both of them for a long time. Then she got in the shower and she went to work. And she chopped onions for 2 hours in the back of a kitchen that smelled like every kitchen she had ever worked in, and she told herself that she was not thinking about him. She was lying. By noon, she had decided what she was going to wear at 8 o'clock. By 6 o'clock, she had changed her mind 3 times. The first dress was the one Keisha had lent her the night before, still in its garment bag, still faintly damp at the hem with the ghost of spilled champagne, and Lena held it against her body in the bathroom mirror for a full minute before she shook her head and put it back in the closet. Wearing Keisha's dress twice in a row would have been too obvious, too much like admitting she didn't own anything of her own worth putting on. The second dress was one she'd bought at a discount store on 34th Street 2 winters ago, black and plain and cut for a woman who was trying not to be looked at. She pulled it over her head, stared at herself, and took it off again. Not for tonight, not for him. She settled, in the end, on a dark green wrap dress she had bought for her 30th birthday back when she and Noah had still been pretending to love each other. She had never worn it. Noah had said the color made her look tired. Standing in front of the mirror now, at 6:52, with her hair still damp from the shower, Lena looked at herself in the green and thought very clearly that Noah had been wrong about a lot of things. Her hands were shaking when she tried to put on her mascara. She set the wand down on the edge of the sink and pressed her palms flat against the porcelain and waited for the shaking to stop. It did not stop. It slowed maybe, but it did not stop. She thought about the text message from the night before, still sitting at the top of her conversations, still unanswered, and she thought about the cream-colored card on her kitchen counter, and she thought about Marta's voice in the corridor. Warnings are for people who still have a choice, and she wondered whether what she was feeling was fear or something else that her body had simply never learned to name. "Get it together," she said to the woman in the mirror. "It's dinner. People eat dinner." The woman in the mirror did not look convinced. At 7:40, she was fully dressed and sitting at the edge of her bed with her coat across her lap, watching the minute hand on her kitchen clock move in its slow, indifferent arc. At 7:45, she stood up and walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside and looked down at the street 4 stories below. The car was already there. It had not been there at 7:30, when she'd last looked. It had simply materialized at some point in the intervening 10 minutes. A long, black car pulled up against the curb with its hazard lights off. A driver in a dark suit standing on the sidewalk with his hands folded in front of him, patient as a church usher. She watched him for a minute. He did not check his watch. He did not look up at her window. He simply stood there, as though he had been given exact instructions about what time to arrive and what to do when he got there, and no instructions at all about what to do in the meantime. Lena let the curtain fall and picked up her purse. Her phone buzzed. A text. Not him. Her mother. "Just checking in, honey. You haven't called since Tuesday. Are you sleeping?" Lena looked at the message for a long moment. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She thought about typing something reassuring, something small, the way she always did. "I'm fine, Mom. Just busy? I'll call Sunday." But her thumb did not move, and in the end she slipped the phone back into her purse without answering. Her mother would worry. That was fine. Her mother was always going to worry, whether Lena answered or not, and tonight Lena did not have the energy to pretend that things were normal, because things were not normal, and something in her had known since she'd stepped into that black car last night that they were not going to be normal again for a long time. She went downstairs. The driver looked up when he heard her footsteps on the stoop. He was older than she'd thought from the window, 50 maybe, with a broken nose that had been set a long time ago and not set quite right. He opened the back door without speaking. "Where are we going?" Lena asked. "Mr. Voss asked me to take you to the Atherton, ma'am." "The Atherton?" "Yes, ma'am." "Isn't that a hotel, ma'am?" "Yes, but the restaurant is on the 42nd floor, and it's a private restaurant, if you follow." "I don't." The driver gave her a small, courteous smile that did not quite reach his eyes, and he gestured at the open door. "You will, ma'am." She got in. The car moved through the city the way only expensive cars move, with a silence so complete that Lena could hear her own pulse in her ears. She watched the streets slide past. Her streets. The streets she took the bus down every morning at 5:30, the corner by the bodega where the same old man sat every day on a folding chair selling roses wrapped in plastic. And she tried to remember what it had felt like 24 hours ago. To be a woman whose biggest problem was the $93 in her checking account. 24 hours ago, she had been invisible. Now she was being driven. The Atherton's lobby was the kind of place that made you walk more slowly without meaning to. Marble, the color of old cream. A fireplace at one end with an actual fire in it, in February. A concierge behind a desk of polished walnut who looked up when she came in and gave her a nod of recognition, as though he had been told to expect her, as though the doorman had already radioed up, as though the entire building had been quietly informed that a woman in a green wrap dress would be coming through at 8 o'clock and was to be treated with a particular kind of care. "Ms. Ward." A woman was walking toward her across the lobby. Not Marta. Someone younger, with a neat blonde bun and a navy suit in the same small professional smile Marta had worn the night before, the one that did not extend above the cheekbones. Lena was starting to recognize that smile. It was the smile of women who worked for Adrian Voss. "I'm Elisa. Mr. Voss is waiting upstairs. If you'll come with me." The elevator had a key slot instead of buttons. Elisa turned her key, and the doors closed, and the car began to rise, and Lena watched the little brass arrow above the door swing past the numbers she could read and up into the ones she couldn't. And somewhere around the 30th floor, she realized that she had forgotten how to breathe normally. "First time at the Atherton?" Elisa said pleasantly. "Yes." "Don't be nervous." "I'm not." Elisa's smile tightened very slightly at the corners. "Good." The elevator opened onto a small foyer with one door at the far end, and the door was open. And through the door, Lena could see a long room with windows on 3 sides and a single table in the middle, set for 2, with candles already lit and a bottle of something cold already sweating in a silver bucket on a stand. Adrian was standing at the far window with his back to her. He was in black again, but not a tuxedo this time. A suit impeccably cut, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His hair was a little less controlled than it had been the night before. He held a glass in one hand and he was looking out at the city spread below him the way a man looks at a thing he has built. Elisa did not announce her. She simply stepped aside, and she pulled the door closed behind Lena as Lena stepped into the room, and that small, precise click of the door was what made Adrian turn. He looked at her. He did not speak. He looked at her for what felt like a very long time, and Lena made herself stand still under the weight of that look, and she thought distantly that she had never in her life been seen this completely by another human being, and she did not know if she liked it. "Green," he said finally. "Excuse me?" "The dress. Green suits you." "My—" She stopped, took a breath. "My ex-boyfriend said it made me look tired." "Your ex-boyfriend was a liar." The words landed flatly. He said them the way another man might have said "it's cold tonight," not as flirtation, not as compliment, as a correction of a factual error that he found personally offensive. Lena did not know what to do with her hands. "Thank you for coming," Adrian said. He crossed the room toward her, unhurried, and he gestured to the table with his glass. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't either." And yet, he pulled out her chair for her. She sat. He sat across from her, and for the first time in the 24 hours she had known his face, Lena saw him fully in good light, and she understood that she had been wrong the night before when she'd thought he was not handsome. He was. He was handsome in a way that did not belong in magazines, because magazines were for faces that had been smoothed and corrected and scrubbed of the things that made a face interesting, and Adrian Voss's face was all the things that had been corrected away from other men's faces. The small white scar through his eyebrow, a faint line at the corner of his mouth that meant he had smiled a lot once, a long time ago, though he did not seem to smile much now. Eyes that were not quite symmetrical, the left one set a fraction of a millimeter lower than the right, and the left one was the one with the scar above it. And Lena wondered, without meaning to, how old he had been when it happened and what the other person had looked like afterward. "What are you thinking?" Adrian said. "I'm thinking," Lena said, "that I don't know why I'm here." "You're here because I asked." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." A waiter came in through a door she hadn't noticed, a silent young man in a white jacket, and he poured something pale into 2 crystal glasses and set a small plate of something green and raw in the center of the table and withdrew without ever making eye contact. Lena watched the door close behind him. "Mr. Voss?" "Adrian." "Adrian, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer me honestly." "All right." "Last night you told me everything about me. My mother's address, my bank balance, my school, the name of the woman who lent me my dress. You had an hour. You told me you had people who work very fast." She paused. She made herself look at him. "Do you do that with every woman you meet?" Adrian set his glass down. "No." "Then why me?" "I already told you. You told me I was the only one you saw." "That's not an answer either. It's a line. It's the kind of thing men say when they want to." "Lena." "What?" "I am not trying to sleep with you." She stopped. Her mouth, which had been open to say something else, closed. She stared at him. He looked back at her steadily. "That's what you think this is," he said. "A man who pulled a woman out of a crowded room to flatter her and get her into bed. I understand why you would think that. It's the reasonable assumption. Is it wrong? It's incomplete. Then complete it." He was quiet for a moment. He turned his glass a quarter turn on the tablecloth, then back. When he spoke, his voice was lower than it had been. I'm 41 years old. I've lived a particular kind of life. The women in the room last night, most of them, I have known for 10 years, some of them for 20. Their husbands do business with me. Their fathers did business with my father. I know what they want before they ask for it, and they know what I will give and what I won't. And there is nothing in any of it that surprises me anymore. Do you understand? No. Then let me put it differently. Yes. He leaned forward slightly. When I walked into that ballroom last night, I already knew how every conversation in the room was going to go. I knew which senator would pretend to congratulate me on the acquisition of the Blackwell estate, and which widow would ask me to dinner on the pretext of introducing me to her daughter, and which of my competitors would tell me I looked well, while his wife watched me across the room to see if I looked at her. I knew all of it. I have known all of it for years. And then I turned around and a woman in a dress that didn't fit her had caught a tray of falling champagne one-handed without thinking about it. And the room had gone quiet around her, and she was apologizing to a 19-year-old waiter instead of shouting at him, and I realized I had no idea what she was going to do next. He paused. That is very rare, he said, in the life I have. Lena did not speak. You asked me why you. That is why you. Because for the first time in a very long time, I looked at another human being and did not know what they were going to do next. And I found that I wanted to know, and I find that I still want to know. That's not, Lena said, and then she had to stop because her throat had closed up a little and she did not want it to. She took a sip of water. The water was very cold. That's not a small thing to say. No. You don't even know me. I know more about you than you know about me, which is an imbalance I would like to correct. How? Ask me anything. Anything? Anything at all. One rule. I won't lie to you, ever. But I reserve the right to decline an answer, in which case I will tell you I am declining. I will not pretend, and I will not distract. Lena looked at him for a long time. The city lights behind him were moving slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible. The little headlights of cars 42 floors below, inching along the black lines of the streets. And somewhere out there, in one of those apartments, in one of those street lamps, in one of those cabs, there was the life she had been living yesterday morning, still going on without her, a life in which she was a line cook with $93 and a mother who worried and a boyfriend who had outgrown her. She could go back to it. The car was downstairs. Elisa would call it for her without a word if she asked. She could go home and delete his text and throw away the cream-colored card and never see him again, and in a month she would remember this as the strangest thing that had ever happened to her, and in a year she would remember it as the night she got away from something. She thought about it. She thought about it for what must have been 30 seconds, and Adrian waited. He did not fidget. He did not fill the silence. He did not look at his watch. He sat across the table from her with his hands folded in front of him and waited for her to decide. And somewhere in the middle of that 30 seconds, Lena understood that this was what he was. Not the money, not the security, not the black car at the curb. The patience. The capacity to sit perfectly still across a table from a woman he had decided he wanted to know and let her decide whether to be known. It was, she thought, more frightening than all the rest of it put together. What do you do? She said. For a living? And don't say business. I buy things that are broken, Adrian said. And I fix them, and I sell them, and the things I do not sell I keep. Sometimes the things are companies. Sometimes they are buildings. Occasionally they are people's lives. I have a staff of 243. I own controlling interests in 17 entities across 6 industries. I am not a nice man, Lena. I want to be clear about that. What does that mean? It means that the people who work for me are loyal because I pay them well, and because I take their loyalty seriously, and because I protect them. It also means that the people who cross me are usually sorry they did, in ways that are sometimes quiet and sometimes not, and that I have done things in the course of my business that I would not want to explain to my mother if she were still alive. I am telling you this because you asked. I am telling you this because you deserve to know it. I am not telling you this because I want you to be afraid of me. Why are you telling me then? Because you will hear it from other people, eventually. And I would rather you hear it from me. The waiter returned. He set plates in front of them that Lena did not look at. She was still looking at Adrian's face. "People are afraid of you," she said. "Some. Should I be?" He did not answer right away. He picked up his fork, and he set it down again, and he looked at her across the candles, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter than she had heard it yet. "No," he said, "you should not be afraid of me, but you should be careful of me, which is not the same thing. And you should understand that those two things can both be true at once. Can you live with that?" "I don't know." "That's an honest answer. Is that what you want? Honest answers?" "Yes, yes." The food came and she ate it without really tasting it. She could not afterwards have told anyone what was on the plate. Something with scallops, something with a sauce that was the color of oyster shells. Adrian asked her about Pittsburgh, and she told him about her mother's house on Beachview Avenue. About the winter she was 14 and her father had walked out, and her mother had kept the heat on high the whole month of January because she could not stand to let her daughters be cold on top of everything else, and how her mother was still paying off that winter's gas bill 10 years later. She told him about culinary school, about the bouillabaisse, about Noah, a little, not the whole thing, not the Rachel part, but enough, about Marco, about the double shifts. Adrian listened. That was the other thing, she realized, the thing that came under the patience. He listened. Not the way men usually listen to women, which was the way men waited, with their face arranged in an expression of listening while they thought about what they were going to say when their turn came. He listened like a man collecting information he intended to use, and the things he chose to ask about were always the things Lena had half hoped he would not notice. "Your father," he said at one point. "Do you know where he is now?" "No." "Would you want to?" "I used to. I don't anymore." "When did that change?" "When my mother stopped asking." He nodded, slowly, as though she had told him something important. At 10:15, the plates were cleared away, and the waiter brought 2 small glasses of something amber that Lena did not recognize, and Adrian picked his up and turned it in the candlelight. "May I tell you something about myself now?" he said. "Yes. My father died when I was 14. He was not a good man. He was in business with other men who were not good men. He died in a way that was not an accident, though the police were told it was one, and at his funeral I learned that he had left my mother with nothing, because the people he had been in business with had decided that his death canceled his debts in both directions. My mother cleaned houses after that. She cleaned the houses of the men who had taken my father's money. She knew exactly which houses they were, and she cleaned them anyway, because she had 2 sons and she had no other way to feed us. She died when I was 23. By the time I was 30, I owned 4 of the houses she had cleaned. I own 2 of them still. I did not need them. I bought them because I wanted to sit in the rooms where she had scrubbed the floors. I am telling you this so that when you hear later that I am a ruthless man, you will understand that I came by it honestly. My mustopam. Lena did not speak for a long moment. Does that make it better or worse? I don't know. I don't think it's my place to decide. What about your brother? Something happened in his face. A shutter coming down, very quickly, very smoothly, and then back up, and when she looked again it was as though she had imagined the shutter entirely. I don't speak about my brother. Okay? I said I wouldn't lie to you. I am declining to answer, as promised. Okay, Adrian. He set his glass down. He looked at her across the candles, and something in his expression had softened. The thing she had seen flicker in him in the corridor the night before when she'd stepped out of Marta's fitting room. The thing he had controlled so quickly she had not been sure she had seen it. She saw it now. Your hair, he said. What about it? Nothing. I was just looking at it. Her face went hot. She felt the blood climb up her throat, and she hated that it was so visible, that her skin, pale as it was, betrayed her every time she felt anything at all. She picked up her glass of amber liquid and took too big a sip, and it burned down her throat in a way that made her eyes water. Easy, Adrian said. That's a 40-year-old Armagnac. Of course it is. I'm not teasing you. I know. If you don't like it, I'll have them bring you something else. No, I like it. She took another sip, smaller this time. It just tastes expensive. He almost smiled. It was the closest she had seen him come to smiling since she'd met him, and the line at the corner of his mouth deepened, the one that meant he had smiled a lot once, And for a half second, Lena saw what he might have looked like at 20, before his face had become the face he wore now. "I have a proposal for you," Adrian said. "A what?" "A proposal. An offer. I want to show you something. Not tonight. Tonight we are eating dinner and talking, but this weekend, Saturday. I have a place on the coast about 2 hours from here. I would like to take you there." "Adrian, not like that." "Not like what?" "Not like what you think I mean. There are 17 bedrooms in that house, Lena. You will have your own. You will have 2 of your own if you want. Marta will go with us. Elisa will go with us. My security will be there, which means that unless you specifically ask them to, none of them will be within 50 feet of you at any point in the weekend. I want to show you something. I want to show you." He paused. He looked away from her, out at the city, for the first time in the whole meal, and Lena saw his jaw work once, and she realized that for whatever reason, whatever he was about to say was harder to say than any of the rest of it had been. "I want to show you," he said, "what your life could look like. Not as an offer. Not as a trade. I don't want anything from you in exchange for it. I want you to see it. And then I want you to go back to your apartment, and I want you to go to work on Monday morning, and I want you to decide, without me in the room, whether there is any part of what you have seen that you want. That's all. That's the whole proposal. You come, you look, you go home, you decide. And if I say no, to Saturday? To all of it, to dinner, to Saturday, to any of this. If I stand up right now and walk out of this room, what happens? You go home. The car takes you. Tomorrow you work your shift. On Wednesday, Marco will mention that a man named Voss has made a standing reservation for Table 9 every Friday night for a year, and you will never see my name on the bill because my assistant pays it, and I will never sit at that table. You will not hear from me again. Your phone number will be deleted. Your name will not appear in any of my calendars. It will be as though we did not meet. That easy. Nothing about this is easy. I am telling you what would happen. And if I say yes to Saturday, then on Saturday at 9 in the morning, the car comes. You bring nothing. Everything you need is in the house. You and I will eat breakfast together on the terrace, and I will show you the kitchen, and I will tell you something I have not told anyone, and then we will have the weekend, and on Sunday night the car brings you home. What is it you want to tell me? You'll hear it on Saturday. Adrian, Lena. He leaned forward just a little. You asked me to be honest, and I am being honest. You asked me what I want, and I have not said because I do not entirely know yet. I know that I want you to come with me on Saturday. I know that whatever happens after Saturday will be your decision and not mine. Beyond that, I am standing at the edge of something I have not stood at the edge of before, and I do not know what is at the bottom of it, and I am telling you this because I said I would not lie. Chaman. The city moved behind him, slow and indifferent. Lena set her glass down. She looked at her hands, at the small white burn on the inside of her left wrist from a splatter of oil 4 years ago, at the callus on the pad of her thumb that Adrian had noticed last night from 30 feet away. These were her hands. They had paid her rent for 12 years. They had made bouillabaisse in a school in Providence, and they had caught a falling tray in a ballroom on Park Avenue, and they had packed up Noah's books into 3 cardboard boxes on the 1st of September, and they had shaken the whole way through it. They were not shaking now. She looked up. Yes, she said. He did not smile. Something in his eyes did, though. The gray gold water went still and deep, and whatever was underneath it moved once and was gone. Thank you, Lena. Don't thank me yet. Why not? Because I haven't made up my mind about any of the rest of it. I'm just coming to look. That's all I asked. Make sure it stays that way. It will. Elisa drove her home herself. Lena did not ask why. She sat in the front seat this time, not the back, because Elisa had held the passenger door open for her, and it had seemed rude to refuse. And Elisa drove carefully through the late-night traffic with both hands on the wheel and did not speak for almost the entire ride. At a red light on 23rd Street, 2 blocks from Lena's apartment, Elisa finally said, "May I say something, Miss Ward?" "Please." "I've worked for Mr. Voss for 8 years. Okay? In 8 years, he has never had me drive a woman home." Lena looked over at her. Elisa's profile in the streetlight was sharp and clean and unreadable. "What does that mean?" "It means," Elisa said, "that whatever this is, It's not what it looks like. What does it look like? From the outside, it looks like a rich man taking an interest in a pretty girl who works in a kitchen. That is what everyone who saw you last night thinks it is. That is what everyone at the Atherton tonight thinks it is. That is what people will keep thinking it is for some time, and you should let them, because that story is safer for you than the truth. What's the truth? I don't know the truth yet, Miss Ward, neither does he. That is the problem. The light turned green. Elisa drove on. She pulled up at the curb outside Lena's building and put the car in park and turned, finally, to look at her directly. Saturday morning, Elisa said. 9 o'clock, I'll be downstairs. Wear something comfortable. The roads get narrow near the coast, and we'll be driving for a while, and you won't want to be in heels. All right. Ms. Ward. Yes. Elisa paused. She opened her mouth, and she closed it, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped a register. He has not been the same man all day today, she said. I have worked for him for 8 years, and I know what he looks like. He has not eaten. He has not gone to his usual appointments. He has canceled 3 meetings. He spent the afternoon on the phone with people I have never heard him speak to. Whatever he is, whatever you are thinking he is about to become something that even he has not been before. I am telling you because you seem like a kind person, and because I would like you to know what you are walking into. Is that a warning? Elisa's smile, when it finally came, was not the small professional one. It was something tireder, more human. No, Ms. Ward, I already told you, warnings are for people who still have a choice. Lena got out of the car. She stood on the curb in her green wrap dress with her coat over her arm, and she watched the long black car ease back into traffic and turn the corner at the end of her block. And then she climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment, and she locked the door behind her, and she stood in the dark of her kitchen with her back against the door for a long time. The cream-colored card was still on her counter. She picked it up. She held it for a moment. Then she opened the drawer of her kitchen table, the one where she kept her takeout menus and her batteries and the note Noah had left her 6 months ago, and she dropped the card in on top of the note, and she closed the drawer. She stood there. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out. It was him. Saturday. 1 word. No punctuation, no signature. It didn't need one. Lena looked at the word on her screen for a long time. Then for the first time she typed back. Saturday. She pressed send before she could think about it. The little dots appeared immediately, as though he had been holding his phone, as though he had been waiting. They appeared and they stayed for almost a full minute, and Lena stood in her dark kitchen in her green dress and watched them pulse. Then they stopped. No message came. She understood somehow that this was his answer, that he had started to write something, and he had changed his mind, and he had put the phone down, and that the silence was on purpose, that he had wanted her to see him almost say something and then stop. She put the phone face down on the counter. She went into her bedroom without turning on any lights. She undressed in the dark, and she hung the green dress very carefully on the hook on the back of her door, and she lay down on her bed in her underwear and pulled the quilt up to her chin. The ceiling above her was the same ceiling it had been 2 nights ago. The water stain in the corner from the upstairs neighbor's leak in November was still in the same place. But somewhere, in a tower 6 blocks from here, or on a coast 2 hours away, or in a black car moving slowly through the streets below her window, a man she had known for less than 48 hours was arranging his weekend around her, and she could not tell anymore, lying there in the dark, whether she was the woman he was doing it for, or the woman it was being done to. She did not know which of those was worse. She did not know either which of them she wanted to be. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep for a long time, and when she finally did, sometime after 3, she dreamed of the ballroom, not of Adrian in it, but of herself, moving through it alone, catching every tray that anyone dropped, her hands always faster than her mind, the champagne going up around her in long, slow fountains that never came back down. The dream was still with her in the morning. She woke at 5:30 out of old habit and lay for a long time in the gray light of her bedroom, watching the water stain on the ceiling, listening to the pipes in the wall shudder as someone 2 floors up turned on a shower. The fountains of champagne were still falling somewhere behind her eyes. She could feel the phantom weight of a tray pressed against her palm. She rolled over and looked at her phone on the nightstand and made herself not check it, which took about 15 seconds to fail at. No new messages. The 1 word she had sent last night was still there. Saturday. Read at 11:47 p.m. and not answered. She did not know if she was relieved or disappointed. She got up. She made coffee. She drank it standing at her kitchen window in a flannel shirt she had owned since she was 22, watching the sky over the rooftops turn from the color of an old bruise to the color of newspaper. The city was waking up. A garbage truck ground its gears in the alley below. The man in 3B had his television on, low but audible through the thin floor, some news anchor reading off the overnight shootings in a voice that had long ago stopped caring about any of them. 48 hours ago, Lena thought, she had been standing at the same window drinking coffee out of this same mug, and Adrian Voss had been a name she did not know. She set the mug down in the sink. She went to work. Marco's kitchen was already hot when she came through the back door at 6:45. Keisha was on the line rolling silverware into napkins. Tomas was breaking down a case of artichokes with the look of a man who had been given a personal insult. Chef Marco himself was at the pass, reading his own handwriting on the prep list and frowning at it the way he frowned at everything, including his own face in the mirror. He looked up when Lena came in. He looked at her for a longer beat than usual. He took off his glasses, wiped them on his apron, and put them back on. "You are here early," he said. "Same time as always." "You look different." "I look tired. I am tired." "No, different." He studied her another second. Then he shook his head once, a small, private gesture, and turned back to his list. "Onions, 3 cases. The big knife. Go." She went. She was grateful for the onions. 12 years of kitchen work had taught her that there was no emotion in the world that could not be outlasted by 120 pounds of yellow onions and a properly sharpened knife. She put on her apron and tied her hair back and pulled the first case off the shelf and started breaking it down. And by 7:30, her eyes were streaming in the honest, uncomplicated way that had nothing to do with anything that was happening in her life. And she felt, for 40 minutes, like a person who had never been to a gala in her life. Keisha came back for a tray of dinner rolls around 8. "So? So what?" "So the dress, Lena. The dress I lent you. For a gala. Which you went to. On a Tuesday. And which I want back, by the way. But mostly I want to know what happened in it. Because you came into the locker room this morning and changed your shoes without saying one single word to me, which is not normal, and I am not letting you out of this kitchen today until you tell me at least one interesting thing. Nothing happened." "Lena." "Nothing important." Keisha set the tray down on the counter and crossed her arms over her chest. She was 26 and 5'2" and from East Harlem and was the only person in the restaurant who would lie to Marco's face and get away with it, because Marco had a soft spot for women who were not afraid of him. "You are," Keisha said, "the worst liar I have ever met, and I grew up with 3 brothers. I met someone." "Oh, honey." "No. Not like... No. I met someone, that's all. We had dinner. You had dinner. Last night." "You... Keisha squinted at her. "Lena. You had a gala Tuesday and a dinner Wednesday with the same person, which means this is not a met someone. This is a something is happening. Who is he?" Lena looked down at her cutting board. The onion on it had been perfectly diced 30 seconds ago and was now being hacked into increasingly uneven pieces by a hand that had started to shake again. "His name is Adrian." "Adrian what?" "Just Adrian." "Lena Ward, you look at me and you tell me his last name." Lena kept her eyes on the cutting board. "Boss?" she said very quietly. There was a silence. It was not a long silence, because the kitchen was a working kitchen and there was a dishwasher running and a pot of stock simmering, and Tomas was throwing artichoke leaves into a metal trash can with unnecessary force, but it was long enough that Lena had time to understand exactly what it meant. She looked up. Keisha had not moved. Keisha's mouth had opened a little and then closed, and her arms had come uncrossed, and she was staring at Lena the way a person stares at someone who has just told her she has a tumor. "Keisha." "Lena, don't." "Lena, honey, Adrian Voss, the Voss group, Adrian Voss." "Yes." "That Adrian Voss." "I don't know another one." "Lena, you don't understand." "I do. I do understand. I know who he..." "You do not understand." Keisha's voice had dropped, and she had leaned across the prep table, and her face in the overhead fluorescent light had gone a shade paler. My uncle worked for a guy who did business with one of the people in that whole... Lena, my uncle is not okay. He has not been okay for 4 years. They found him in his car in a parking garage in New Jersey, and the official story is it was a... Keisha, I am telling you. I know. Lena set her knife down. I know, okay? I know who he is. I know what he is. He told me himself. He told you. Last night. He told you what he is. He told me he is not a nice man. He told me that people who cross him are sorry. He told me I should be careful of him. He said all of it, Keisha. He said he wasn't going to lie to me, and I looked at him, and I... She stopped. She didn't know how to finish the sentence. And you what? And I believed him. Keisha was quiet for a long moment. She picked up the tray of dinner rolls. She put it down again. Lena, she said, I am not your mother. I am not going to tell you what to do. But I am going to say one thing, and then I am going to shut up about it, because it is not my life, and I already know what you are going to do anyway, because I can see it in your face, and I saw it in your face the second you walked in here this morning, okay? Okay. Men like that, Keisha said, do not break when you hit them. They bend. They bend a little, and they let you think you have moved them, and the whole time they are just measuring you, and when they decide they have your measurements, they straighten up, and whatever they wanted from you, they take. And they do not take it in a way that lets you say no. He's not. I didn't say he was. I said the men like him are. And they all look like something else first. That's how they work. Lena did not say anything. Keisha picked up her tray of rolls and started toward the swinging door to the dining room. At the door she stopped, and she turned back and her face had softened. But if he hurts you, Lena, I will stab him with my own knife. I will go to jail. It will be fine. She shouldered the door open and was gone. Lena stood at her cutting board for a full minute before she started dicing onions again. He did not text her on Thursday. He did not text her on Friday. By Friday night, Lena had convinced herself 4 different times that he had changed his mind, and 4 different times that she had changed hers. And in the end, she did not pack a bag because he had told her to bring nothing, and because she was still not, even on Friday night at 11 p.m., entirely sure she was going to get in the car in the morning. She slept badly. She woke at 7. She showered for a long time with the water as hot as she could stand it, and stood under it with her forehead pressed against the tile until her skin was red. She put on jeans. She put on a gray sweater that had belonged to her father once, a long time ago, the only thing of his she had kept when he left. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and thought, "You are 30 years old. You have made worse decisions than this." Probably. At 8:55, she was standing at her window. At 8:59, the car turned the corner. Elisa was driving again. She did not say good morning. She got out. She opened the passenger door. Lena came down the 4 flights of stairs, and she stood on the stoop in her father's sweater with her coat folded over her arm. And for 1 second, she thought about turning around and going back up. She got in. Elisa pulled away from the curb. "Did you sleep?" Elisa said. No, neither did he. The drive was almost 3 hours. They went north at first, along the river, past the stretch of the city where the highway signs all carried the names of towns Lena had never been to, and then east onto a smaller road that wound through low hills, and then onto a smaller road still, 2 lanes of old asphalt running through woods that had not yet started to come back from winter. The trees on either side were gray and black, bare-limbed, and every now and then Lena would see the flash of dark water through them, an arm of some inlet or salt river that kept appearing and disappearing as the road climbed and fell. Elisa drove in silence for the first hour. Then she said, without looking over, "He called me at 4 this morning. Is he okay? He asked me if I thought you would come." "What did you say?" "I said I did not know. I said you had every reason not to. I said if you did, it would be because you decided to, and not because of anything anyone else had said to you. And he agreed, and he hung up. That's all. That's all. He didn't tell you to, I don't know, to... No, Ms. Ward. He does not tell me to do things like that. He has never once in 8 years asked me to influence a person I was driving. If he had, I would not still be working for him." "Why are you still working for him?" Elisa's hands on the wheel did not move. She did not turn her head. She drove them around a long, slow curve where the road came out of the woods into a stretch of marsh, flat and silver-brown under the late morning sun, a line of gulls standing along a fence post with their backs to the car. Because 5 years ago, Elisa said, my son had an accident. He was 17. He did something stupid in somebody else's car, and a girl was hurt. Not badly, but enough. Her family wanted blood, and they had money, and the district attorney wanted a career, and my son was going to go to prison for 11 years. Mr. Voss heard about it. I had never asked him. He heard about it because he pays attention to the people who work for him. He made 3 phone calls, Ms. Ward. I do not know what was said in those phone calls. I do not want to know. My son served 4 months in a county facility and then went to trade school in Ohio, and he is a plumber now, and he has a daughter named after me, and the girl who was hurt had every medical bill paid for 6 years and then some. That is why I am still working for him. G.I.? Lena did not speak. I'm not telling you this, Elisa said, because I think it excuses anything. I'm telling you this because you asked. I didn't really ask. You were going to. Another silence. The gulls on the fence post got smaller in the side mirror. Miss Ward. Please, Lena. Lena, he is a bad man in certain ways. In other ways, he is the best man I have ever worked for. Both of those are true, and neither cancels the other. Whatever you decide this weekend, you should decide knowing both. Okay? That is all I am going to say. And it was. They came around a last curve of the coast road, and the house rose out of the land like it had been there longer than the land had been named. That was Lena's first thought, which was absurd, because houses like this one did not exist in places like this without people having built them very recently on top of something else. But the way it sat, long and low, the color of weathered stone, built right out to the edge of a bluff that dropped maybe 60 feet to the water, made it look inevitable, as though someone had simply identified the one place along this whole stretch of coast where a house belonged and then put one there. There was no gate. There was, instead, a long drive lined with old cedar trees, and a turnaround at the end of it paved with gray brick. And as Elisa pulled in, Lena saw 2 men in dark jackets standing with their hands folded near a fountain that wasn't running. And the men did not move as the car came up, but one of them spoke briefly into a wrist, and the other lifted his chin in a tiny nod that was not for her. Adrian was standing on the front steps. He was in dark trousers and a cream-colored sweater. A sweater, Lena thought, with a small shock, because she had not imagined him in anything other than a suit, and the softness of the wool made him look, for one disorienting second, like a different man altogether. His hair was wind-tossed. His hands were in his pockets. He did not come down the steps as the car pulled up. He waited. Elisa got out. She opened Lena's door. Thank you, Elisa. Of course, Lena. Lena stepped out onto the brick. The wind off the water was harder than she had expected, cold and salty and alive. And her hair blew across her face, and she pushed it back with one hand and she looked up at Adrian on the steps. You came, he said. I said I would. People say a lot of things. I'm not most people. The thing in his face that had almost smiled in the restaurant did it again now, and it went a little further this time. The line at the corner of his mouth deepened, and his eyes narrowed slightly against the sun, and he came down the steps, and he did not try to touch her, and he did not try to take her coat, and he said very simply, Are you hungry? Yes. Good. Come in. About time. The inside of the house was not what she had expected. She did not know what she had expected. Marble, maybe, gold leaf, chandeliers, the kind of money that announced itself. But the inside of the house on the bluff was wood, dark wood floors, wide planks that had seen 100 years of use, rugs that had been walked on, a stone fireplace at one end of the long main room with an actual fire in it, chugging quietly against the cold. 2 long, low couches in a color Lena could not name, gray-green, maybe, or the color of the inside of an oyster shell. Books. A lot of books. An entire wall of them, floor to ceiling, on shelves that had been built into the wood of the house itself. It was the most livable room Lena had ever been in. And she had expected to hate it. She had expected a house like this one to be a performance, the way his suits were a performance, the way the Atherton had been, and instead the house on the bluff was the first thing about Adrian Voss that had looked, when she saw it, like something a person actually lived inside. "This was my mother's house," Adrian said from behind her. She turned. "I thought she didn't own it. She cleaned it. For a woman named Eleanor Crew, who lived here for 42 years and who died the year I turned 32. Eleanor Crew left the house to her nephew. The nephew was in Wyoming and had no interest in a house on the coast, and he put it on the market in the spring of 2017, and I bought it in June." A pause. "My mother used to walk the rooms of this house with a bucket. She told my brother and me once that it was the most beautiful house she had ever been inside. She told us that when she cleaned the kitchen, she could see the water from the window over the sink, and that she would stand there longer than she needed to sometimes and pretend." "Pretend what?" "She didn't say." Lena did not speak. "I have not told anyone," Adrian said, "the history of this house. Not the way I just told it to you. The people who work for me know it's my house. They don't know about my mother. You should understand that what I am telling you this weekend, I have not told anyone." "Why are you telling me?" He looked at her. He did not have an answer that did not sound, he seemed to realize, like a line from a movie. His jaw worked once. He looked past her, at the fire. "I don't know," he said. "Adrian." "I don't know, Lena. I told you. I am standing at the edge of something." "And you're not afraid?" "I am afraid of one or two things in this life. This is one of them." Marta had food waiting in the kitchen. Lena had thought, walking in, that she might pretend not to be hungry, because she was a woman who had been raised to be polite in other people's houses. But the food was laid out on a long wooden table by the window, and the window looked out over the water, and the table was set for two, and the food was, Lena realized, with a little shock of professional recognition, not fancy. It was a plate of sliced bread and butter, a ramekin of honey, a bowl of cold roasted potatoes with rosemary, eggs, a wheel of cheese. It was breakfast. Real breakfast. The kind of breakfast that people ate. "I thought you'd be tired of performances," Adrian said. "Is that what the Atherton was?" "Yes." "Why did you do it then?" "Because I did not know yet that you were tired of them." She sat down. He sat across from her. Marta poured coffee, black, into two white mugs that had been used enough to have small chips in their rims, and then Marta disappeared. And it was the two of them at the long table in front of the window, and the water below the bluff was the flat metallic color the Atlantic gets on a cold, bright day in late February. And there were two cormorants sitting on a rock at the foot of the cliff with their wings spread, drying in the sun. "I have something to tell you," Adrian said. "You said that on Wednesday. You said you'd tell me today." "Yes." "All right." He was quiet for a moment. He picked up his coffee, turned the mug in his hands, set it down again. Lena waited. She had learned in 3 days of knowing him that when Adrian Voss did not speak right away, it was because he was choosing his words, and that the best thing she could do was let him choose them. "I have a daughter," he said. She did not answer. "Her name is Nora. She is 11 years old. She lives with her mother in a house about 40 miles from here. Her mother and I were never married. I am not proud of the arrangement. We were together for 2 years, in a way that did not look like being together from the outside. And when Nora was born, her mother and I agreed that it would be better for the child if she grew up in a house where I was not present. I pay. I see her twice a year. Her mother is a good woman, and a better mother than I would ever have been a father, and Nora knows who I am, and she does not call me anything, and we have an arrangement. She will inherit. She is, as far as the world is concerned, not my daughter. As far as she and I and her mother are concerned, she is." Lena set her own coffee down, carefully. "I have not told anyone," Adrian said, "who does not already need to know." "Why are you telling me?" "Because you asked, on Wednesday, whether I did what I did to every woman I met. And the honest answer is that I have not been with a woman in any meaningful way in 10 years. I have not wanted to be. I did not believe until Tuesday night that I was going to want to be again. I am telling you about Nora because she is the reason I am the way I am, about all of this. Because there is a child in the world whose last name is not mine, and who is 11 years old, and who is being raised by someone kinder than me. And because of her, I have spent 10 years trying to be less bad than I was born. I am not there yet. I am not sure I will ever get there, but I'm trying." Lena could not speak. "That is the thing," Adrian said, "that I wanted to tell you. That is the thing I said I would tell you today. Not because it is romantic or because I want you to feel sorry for me, but because it is the truest thing I know how to say about myself. And if you're going to spend a weekend in this house deciding whether you want any part of a life that includes me, then you should know it." The cormorants on the rock lifted off, one and then the other, and they flew low over the water with their wingtips almost touching the surface, and then they were gone around the point. "Does she know about your mother?" "She knows about her grandmother, yes. She has been to this house. She likes the library." "Does she know about the rest of it? About what you do?" "Some. She knows more than her mother would prefer and less than she will find out on her own, in time. She is 11. She is very bright, Lena. She will not be 11 for much longer." "And her mother?" "Her mother knew what I was when we met. She did not know how much of it, because no one does when they meet me, but she knew enough. She got out while Nora was still in the womb. I have never blamed her. I do not blame her now. I would have done the same." Lena looked down at her plate. She had not touched the bread. She picked up a piece now and she tore it in half, and she spread butter on it, and she bit into it, because she needed to do something with her hands, and because the bread was good. It was very good. It had been baked that morning, somewhere in this house, by someone she had not yet met. She chewed it slowly and swallowed it and took a sip of her coffee. Then she looked at him. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "You're welcome. I don't know what to do with it." "I don't need you to do anything with it. You asked me on Wednesday to complete what I had said, and you asked me to be honest. I am doing both. That's all." Adrian. "Yes. I don't know what I'm doing here." He put his coffee down. "Neither do I, Lena." "Then what are we doing?" "I told you. We are eating breakfast. And then I am going to show you the kitchen, because I built it for someone who has not yet used it. And then you are going to walk down to the beach, by yourself, because it is a good beach, and I think you need to walk, and I will not go with you because I do not want you to feel watched. And then we are going to have dinner tonight, and I am going to ask you about your life, and you are going to ask me about mine, and on Sunday night you are going to go home, and for the next week you're going to sit in your apartment and think. Those are the things we are doing. Everything else we are not doing. You built a kitchen." "Yes. For I will show you." Comment. The kitchen was at the back of the house. It was not the family kitchen, the one where Marta had laid out the bread and the eggs. It was a separate room, down a short hallway, and Adrian opened the door and stepped aside and let Lena go in first, and Lena took 2 steps into the room and stopped. It was a professional kitchen, not a rich person's version of one, with gleaming appliances that had never been used and a 6-burner range for a man who ordered in. This was a real one. 2 ranges, a flat top, a wood-burning oven set into the far wall, 2 long stainless steel prep tables, a walk-in, a passes. The lighting was correct. The floors were the right kind of rubber. The ventilation, she could tell from the throat of the hood over the ranges, had been calculated for a real working kitchen. Someone who knew kitchens had designed this room. Someone who had spent time in them. Someone who understood that a professional kitchen was not a luxury, but a machine, and that the machine had to be laid out so that a person could move through it for 14 hours without their body breaking. It had not been used. That was the thing that hit her hardest. Everything was new. The rubber on the floor still had that smell. The stainless steel still had the plastic film on the corners of the prep tables where no one had bothered to peel it off, because no one had prepped anything on them yet. The pass was empty. The walk-in, when she opened it without asking, was completely bare. No one had cooked a single meal in this room, not one. "Adrian?" she said. "Yes. How long has this been here?" 18 months. 18. I built it 18 months ago. I have not used it. I do not cook. Marta uses the other kitchen." "Then why?" "Because," he said, "I knew I would meet you eventually." She turned to look at him. He was standing in the doorway with his hands in his pockets, and his face was doing the thing it did when he was trying not to feel something. The line at the corner of his mouth had gone flat. His eyes had gone very still. "That's not possible," Lena said. "No. You didn't know me 18 months ago. No, I did not. Then what does that mean? It means, Adrian said slowly, that I knew 18 months ago that I wanted there to be a person in my life who would use this room. I did not know what she looked like, or where she worked, or her name. I knew what her hands would look like. I knew she would be tired. I knew she would have cooked in places that were not worthy of what she could do. I did not know it would be you. I am not saying that. I am saying that I built this room for the possibility of you, whoever you turned out to be, and that on Tuesday night when I watched you catch that tray, I thought, there she is. Adrian, I know how that sounds. Do you? Yes. She stepped further into the kitchen. She ran her hand along the edge of the nearest prep table. The stainless steel was cold under her palm. She could see, now that she was closer, the small details. The placement of the outlets, the height of the hanging rack, the way the mise station had been built for someone about her height. The dish pit angled so that a cook working alone could see the front of the house without turning her back on the line. Someone had thought about all of it. Someone had paid. Someone had sat across a table from a contractor and said no. Higher, she is 5'7", and Lena was 5'7", and she did not think that was a coincidence because she did not think anything about Adrian Voss was a coincidence anymore. This is insane, she said. I know. You know this is insane. Yes. Adrian, you cannot build a kitchen for a woman you have not met. And yet, this is not, Lena. This is not normal. I know. I have known for a long time that I am not normal. I am telling you this, and I am showing you this, because you asked me to be honest. If you want to leave now, you can leave now. Elisa will take you home. Nothing I have said or shown you obliges you to anything. You are not in my debt. You will never be in my debt. She stood in the middle of the empty kitchen with her hand on a stainless steel prep table that was exactly the right height for her. She looked at him in the doorway. She thought about all the kitchens she had worked in, about the burns up and down her forearms, about the one in Providence where the ceiling had leaked black water onto her station every time it rained, about the one in Queens where the owner had pinched her hip and she had said nothing because she had needed the job, about Marco's, which was the best one, and which still smelled like onions and industrial bleach, and the old man who worked the fryer and never washed his apron. She thought about the bouillabaisse she had made when she was 23. She thought about the fact that she had not made it since. Something in her chest cracked. It was a very small crack. It did not make any noise. She was not going to cry. She was not going to give him that, not in this room, not on the second day. But something had given way under the ribs, and the thing that was behind it was something she had been carrying around unnamed for a very long time, and she did not know what to do with it now that it had a kitchen to put itself into. I'm going to take that walk, she said. All right, by myself. Yes. Don't send anyone. I won't. She walked past him out of the kitchen, and she did not look at him as she passed because if she had looked at him, she was not sure what she would have done, and she did not want to do whatever it was before she had walked for a while in the cold air. The path down to the beach was cut into the side of the bluff, wooden stairs with a rope handrail, 140 steps, she counted, down to a small crescent of gray sand that was empty in both directions for as far as she could see. The tide was out. The wet sand past the high water line was dark and firm, and she walked along it with her hands in her coat pockets. And the wind came off the water hard enough to make her eyes sting, and the eyes stung, and the eyes stung. And after a while, Lena realized that she was crying, and had been for some time, and that it was a particular kind of crying she had never done before in her life. It was not the crying of a woman who had been left. It was the crying of a woman who had just been seen. She did not know which of those was more dangerous. She walked all the way to the point and stood there for a long time with the wind in her hair, and the cormorants riding the swells out beyond the surf, and she thought about her father, who had walked out when she was 14, and about her mother on Beachview Avenue, and about Noah, whose face she was already starting to have trouble remembering clearly, and about the kitchen up on the bluff that had been built for her before she existed. And she understood, standing at the point, that she was going to go back up the stairs. She was going to go back up, and she was going to eat dinner with him, and she was going to sleep in one of the 17 bedrooms, and she was going to come back next week and the week after that, and she was going to cook in the kitchen that he had built, and she was going to let him open the door to whatever came next, and she was going to walk through it, not because he had asked her to, not because he had flattered her, not even because of the kitchen, because nobody in her life ever had looked at her the way he had looked at her standing in that doorway and told her the truth about themselves, and then handed her the keys to a room and a life and a door, and let her decide. That was what he was offering, she understood. Not money, not the house, not the kitchen, the decision. She turned back along the beach. The house on the bluff sat above her in the pale winter light, long and low and waiting, and she saw a figure in a cream sweater standing at one of the upper windows, motionless, watching her come. He had said he would not watch. He was watching anyway. She did not hold it against him. She walked up the 140 stairs, and her legs burned by the end, and when she came over the top of the bluff, Adrian was no longer at the window. He was waiting for her at the back door of the house, and the door was open, and the fire in the long, low room was bright behind him, and he did not ask her what she had decided. He just held the door open. She went in. The weekend ended the way Adrian had said it would. On Sunday night, Elisa drove her home. The drive back was quieter than the drive out, which Lena had not thought possible. She watched the coast road uncurl itself in reverse, the marsh and the gulls and the low hills, and by the time they were back in the city, the sky had gone the color of a bruise again, and the streetlights had come on, and her apartment building looked, from the curb, like somewhere she had not lived in a long time. Elisa carried her bag up to the stoop. Lena had not packed a bag on Saturday morning, but on Sunday afternoon, Marta had quietly placed 3 changes of clothes into a leather weekender and set it by the front door, and when Lena had started to protest, Marta had said very gently, "The clothes are already bought, Ms. Ward. They will only go to charity otherwise," and Lena had understood that this was not a thing she was going to win. "Good night, Lena." "Good night, Elisa. He will call you tomorrow." "He said he wouldn't. He said he would give you the week. He will still call you tomorrow. He is trying very hard not to. He will fail. I am telling you so that when the phone rings, you will not be startled." "Elisa." "Yes. Thank you." Elisa nodded once and went back down to the car. Lena stood on the stoop with the leather bag at her feet and watched the black car pull away from the curb and turn the corner, and she stood there for another full minute after it was gone, because she was not entirely sure she knew how to walk back into her apartment as the person she had become in the last 3 days. She walked in anyway. She climbed the 4 flights. She set the bag on her kitchen table, and she did not unpack it. She stood at her window and she looked out at the street below. And the man in 3B was already playing his music, some country song about a woman who had left on a Greyhound. And Lena thought, for the first time in her life, that the man in 3B might have been trying to tell her something all along. Her phone rang at 9:47 on Monday morning. She was on her break at Marco's, standing in the alley behind the kitchen in her apron, drinking burned coffee out of a paper cup. She looked at the screen. It was him. She let it ring 3 times. She answered on the 4th. "You said you wouldn't call. I said I would give you the week. Those are the same thing." "They are not. I am calling you to tell you that I am trying not to call you, which is different." She closed her eyes. She leaned her head back against the cold brick of the building behind her. "Adrian, I know. You can't do this. I am doing it. How am I supposed to—" She stopped, took a breath, brought her voice back down. "How am I supposed to sit in my apartment and think about anything if you're going to call me after 21 hours to tell me that you are trying not to call me?" "I don't know. That's not a good answer. I am aware." "Adrian, listen to me. I told you I would give it a week. You told me you would give me a week. That was the deal. I need the week. I need to go to work and come home and eat bad pasta out of a pan and sleep in my own bed and figure out whether I am actually thinking clearly or whether I am in some kind of—" "Lena." "What?" "All right. All right. All right, a week. I won't call again. Thank you." "Lena." "What?" A pause. Longer than she expected. She could hear very faintly the sound of traffic through his end of the line, which meant he was not at his desk, which meant he had walked somewhere to make this call, and that small detail landed in her chest the way most of the small details about him had been landing, with a weight that was not proportional to its size. "I will not say what I want to say on a phone." "Then don't say it." "All right." He hung up. Lena stood in the alley with the phone against her ear for another 10 seconds. listening to the silence. And then she put it in her pocket and went back inside and chopped shallots for the rest of her shift. He did not call again. He kept his word. That was the thing that started to undo her in the long, slow days of that week. He kept his word. Tuesday came and went. Wednesday came and went. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. No calls, no texts, no black car. When Marco asked her at the end of Friday night service whether she was all right, because she had been quiet and she had burned a fish, Lena said she was fine. And Marco had looked at her the way he had looked at her the morning after the gala, for a second too long, and then he had nodded and let her go home. She lay in her bed on Saturday morning and stared at the water stain on her ceiling and understood that she had already made her decision and that she had made it on the beach a week ago with her eyes stinging in the wind, and that every hour since then had been her trying to talk herself out of it. She was not going to be talked out of it. She texted him at 11:17 on Saturday morning. "I'm in." The dots appeared immediately. "Can I see you tonight?" "Yes. I'll send the car at 7. "All right." That was how it started. That was how the quiet part of it started, the part of it that went on through the spring, the part that felt, from the inside, less like falling into something and more like slowly discovering that the floor she had been standing on her whole life had in fact been the roof of a much larger building, and that there were whole rooms below her that she had never known were there. They had dinner on Saturday. They had dinner on Wednesday. They had the next weekend at the house on the bluff, and the weekend after that, and in the middle of the third weekend, on a Saturday afternoon when the wind off the water was warmer than it had been, Adrian took her into the empty kitchen and he handed her a thin black folder and he said, "This is yours." "What is it?" "Open it." She opened it. It was a deed. It took her a minute to understand what she was looking at, because legal paper had a way of not saying what it meant, but she read it twice and she understood the second time. A building. On Pearl Street. 2 doors down from Marco's. The ground floor was commercial, the upper 2 floors residential. The commercial space had been a dry cleaner's for 31 years and had closed in October when the owner had retired. Lena had walked past the boarded-up front window every morning on her way to work for 4 months without thinking about it twice. The deed was in her name. Not in Adrian's name, with her as a tenant. Not in the name of a company he controlled, with her as an employee. In her name. Lena Marie Ward. Her middle name. She had not told him her middle name, though she supposed that by now it was naive to assume there was anything about her he did not know. "Adrian." "Yes." "What is this?" "Your kitchen, your restaurant, your building, whatever you want it to be. The deed is yours as of Monday. I paid for the building. I will pay for the renovations. I will pay the staff until you are profitable, and if you are never profitable, I will pay the staff forever. Everything past the front door is yours. Menu, name, hours, design, staff, concept. You hire, you fire. I will not walk into that kitchen unless you invite me to. I will not eat there unless you tell me I may. My name will not be on anything. My office will not call your office. My people will not negotiate with your people. You will make it, or you will not make it, entirely on your own. Do you understand?" She could not speak. "Lena, I understand the words you are saying, but they don't make sense to me. They will. Adrian, Adrian, this is not a gift. I don't even know what this is." "It is a gift. It is only a gift. It is the thing I told you about in the Atherton, the thing I did not know what it was yet. I know what it is now. I have known for about 2 weeks. I wanted to tell you in a way that you could refuse without it costing you anything." "Refuse?" "If you don't want it, I will sell the building. I will lose a little money. I will not lose anything that matters." "If I don't want it?" "Yes." She closed the folder. She set it down on the nearest prep table. She pressed both her hands flat against the stainless steel. "Adrian," she said very carefully, "I need you to understand something. All right. If I take this from you, it is not from me. The deed is in your name. Legally, it is not from me. Don't do the lawyer thing. I need you to understand that if I take this and we stop, whatever we are, I am not giving it back. I am not going to feel like I owe you. I am not going to wake up in 5 years and realize I have been living in a gift I can't afford to keep. If I take this, it is mine. and you are not going to be able to take it back, and I am not going to be grateful to you for the rest of my life. Lena. What? That, he said quietly, is exactly why I am giving it to you. She looked at him for a long time. She took the folder. Down. The restaurant took 6 months. She called it Ward's because every name she tried to invent sounded to her like a brand, and because her own name was the only thing she had made with her own hands that she was not entirely ashamed of. She kept the long, narrow shape of the old dry cleaners. She kept the tin ceiling. She tore out the plate glass in the front window and put in small panes with brass muntins, because she wanted the light to come in squares. She took the old concrete floor and had it polished rather than replaced, because the concrete was already 60 years old and she liked the thought that the bones of the room predated every person who would ever cook in it, including her. She hired Keisha to run the front of the house. At a salary Keisha made Lena write out 3 times on a napkin before she believed it. She hired Tomas as her sous chef, and when Marco called her to tell her she was a thief and a viper and he loved her very much, Lena cried in the back of her new empty dining room for 10 minutes and then called him back and sent him a case of wine. Adrian did not come to the building. Not once, through all 6 months of the build. Lena invited him twice. He said both times, very politely, "No." "You will tell me when it is time," he said, and he did not elaborate, and she stopped asking. They were together every weekend now, sometimes in the city, more often at the house on the bluff. She met Nora in April. It was not a production. Adrian drove her himself, the only time Lena ever saw him drive, a small gray car that did not match anything else about him, and he took her to a diner in a town she had never heard of, and Nora was already in a booth at the back with her mother, and Nora was 11 and sharp-eyed and had her father's mouth and her mother's long hands, and she looked at Lena for a full 30 seconds before she said, "You're the cook." "I am. My dad built you a kitchen." "He did. It's a weird thing to build somebody." "It is. Are you going to cook for us sometime?" "If your mom says I can." Nora's mother had looked at Lena then, and the 2 women had understood across the table a thing that did not need to be said. Nora's mother was tired. Nora's mother had been tired for a very long time. Nora's mother was not going to stand in the way of anything that might make this 11-year-old girl's father easier to deal with, and she was not going to pretend to Lena that she did not know exactly what she was looking at. "You can cook for us," Nora's mother said. "Not this month. Maybe in the summer." "Okay." "Nora, finish your milkshake." "I am finishing it. Stop telling me to finish it." Adrian did not speak for the whole 40 minutes. He sat beside Lena in the booth with his hand around a coffee he did not drink, and he watched his daughter, and Lena saw on his face for the first time something she had not been sure he possessed. Not love. She had not doubted that he loved his daughter. Something else. Regret. A specific, quiet, settled kind of regret. The kind a man carries in his jaw for 10 years until it becomes part of the shape of his face. In the car on the drive back, he did not speak until they were almost at the house. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not being strange with her." "She's 11, Adrian. She's not a bomb." "No." "She's a kid." "Yes." "You can't treat her like a bomb. She'll know you're doing it, and she'll never forgive you for it." He looked over at her. He looked away. He drove another half-mile in silence. "I did not know," he said, "until today that you would be good with her." "Did you think I wouldn't be?" "I didn't let myself think about it. If you had been cruel to her even once, I would have ended this today. I would have driven you home, and I would have ended it. I want you to know that. I do not know how to say it in a way that does not sound frightening, but I want you to know it." "Okay. Is that all right to say?" "Yes, Adrian, it's all right to say." The trouble started the week before the restaurant opened. She should have seen it coming. In retrospect, everyone should have seen it coming. Adrian, who saw most things, had been watching something on the edges of his own life for weeks, and Marta had gone quieter than usual in May, and Elisa had mentioned offhand that she was driving a different route to the house on weekends now. But Lena had been inside her own head with her menus and her hires and her wine list, and she had not been paying attention, and the first she knew of it was on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, in the half-finished dining room of her own restaurant, when a man she had never seen before walked in off the street as though he owned the place. He was tall. Not Adrian's kind of tall, which was contained and elegant. This was the other kind, the heavy kind. A man built like a piece of furniture, in a charcoal suit that was expensive but did not fit him because no suit was going to fit a body like that, with a face that had been handsome once in a hard college athlete way and that had gone soft in the wrong places in his 50s. He had silver at his temples and a gold watch and a cologne she could smell from across the room. Keisha, who was behind the bar counting glassware, stopped counting. "We're not open yet," Lena said. "I know." The man's voice was pleasant. It was almost musical. It was the kind of pleasant that was designed to be noticed. "I wasn't coming in to eat. I was coming in to meet you." "And you are?" "Victor Hale." The name meant nothing to her. It meant something to Keisha, though. Lena saw Keisha's face change, a small, fast blanking. And something in the way Victor Hale watched Keisha's face change told Lena that he had wanted Keisha to react, that he had come in and said his name the way a man throws a pebble into a pond to see how the water moves. "I don't know you," Lena said. "No, you don't. But we have a friend in common." "I doubt that." He smiled. It was a good smile. It was a smile he had practiced. "Miss Ward, may I sit?" "No." "All right." He did not sit. He leaned his hip instead against the back of a chair, and he looked around the half-built room the way a man appraises a horse. "This is a handsome room. You have good taste." "Thank you." "The tin ceiling is original." "It is." "The floor is the old concrete." "Yes." "The lease is not a lease. The building is owned outright. I checked this morning. By you, personally. Free and clear of any encumbrance as of April 12th. Lena did not answer. "That is an unusual arrangement, Ms. Ward, for a line cook from Pittsburgh with a history of overdraft fees. I hope you'll forgive me for having been curious about it. Get out." "Miss Ward." "Mr. Hale, I don't know who you are. I don't want to know who you are. I have a restaurant to open and I don't have time for whatever this is. Get out." He did not move. His pleasant smile did not waver. "I want to offer you some information," Victor Hale said. "Not for any price, for free. Because I think you are a woman who will want it, and I think Adrian Voss has not given it to you, and I think he has not given it to you on purpose. I don't want it." "You do, though. You just don't know it yet." He reached inside his jacket. Keisha's hand moved under the bar, and Lena did not know what Keisha kept under the bar, and was suddenly very glad she had not asked. But Victor Hale was not reaching for anything dangerous. He took out a plain white envelope. He set it on the nearest table. He did not push it toward her. "There is a name in there," he said. "A man named David Ruiz. Mr. Ruiz was the owner of a small transportation company. 3 trucks. A warehouse on Cotton Street. He had a son in college and a daughter who had just been married, and a wife he had been married to for 31 years. In the fall of 2019, Mr. Ruiz declined an offer to sell his company to one of Mr. Voss's subsidiaries. He declined the offer twice. On the night of November the 4th, 2019, Mr. Ruiz's warehouse burned to the ground, and 2 of his 3 trucks were destroyed, and Mr. Ruiz himself was inside one of the trucks when it burned, though the coroner's report specifies that he was deceased before the fire began. Mr. Ruiz's family sold the company to Mr. Voss's subsidiary 3 weeks later for approximately 40 cents on the dollar. That was 5 years ago. You will not find this story in any newspaper. You will find the name and the address of the warehouse, and the name of the lead investigator with the state police in the envelope. You can verify everything I've just told you in an afternoon. I am giving you this because I am a man who believes women should make informed decisions about the men they give their lives to, Ms. Ward. I don't expect you to thank me. Go on. Get out. Of course. He straightened up. He adjusted his cuff. I apologize for the intrusion. I won't come back. Good luck with your opening. He walked out the front door the way he had come in, unhurried, and through the brass-muntined window Lena watched him get into a dark green sedan that pulled up for him at the curb. And the sedan drove away, and she stood in her own restaurant with her hand flat on the bar, and she did not move for a full minute. Lena, Keisha said, don't. Lena, don't pick up that envelope. I wasn't going to. You were. She was. Her hand was already reaching. She stopped it. She pulled it back. She looked at the envelope on the table, and then she looked at Keisha across the bar, and Keisha's face was pale and set. "Who was that?" Lena said. "I don't know him personally." "Keisha." "I don't know him personally. I know the name. Everybody in a kitchen knows the name." "What does it mean?" "It means he is exactly what Adrian is, but older, and in a different... He is on the other side of something. I don't know what something. I don't ask. You don't ask either. These are men who know each other. That is all. He did not come in here today by accident. He came in here today because he wanted you to pick up that envelope." "I know. Don't pick it up." "I'm going to pick it up." "Lena, I have to, Keisha." "No, you don't." "I do." "Why?" Lena looked at the envelope. She looked at the unfinished pass. She looked at the tin ceiling and the brass muntined window and the long, polished concrete floor that predated her. And she thought about Adrian Voss on the steps of the house on the bluff in his cream-colored sweater. And she thought about the 11-year-old girl in a diner booth drinking a chocolate milkshake. And she thought about a man named David Ruiz who had refused to sell a company and who had been inside a truck when it burned. "Because I'm sleeping with him, Keisha." "Lena, I'm in love with him." "Oh, honey, I know. I know what I sound like. I know what you are about to say. I don't need you to say it. I need you to go into the kitchen and count the wine glasses again and let me open this envelope. And then I am going to decide what I'm going to do with what is in it. And I'm going to decide on my own, because this is the only thing in this whole restaurant that he did not give me." Keisha looked at her for a long moment. Then she walked out from behind the bar and she went into the kitchen without a word, and Lena heard her start counting wine glasses. And the counting was a little louder and a little more violent than it needed to be. Lena picked up the envelope. She opened it. Yet, that night she did not go to the house on the bluff. Adrian had expected her. Elisa had texted her at 5. Lena had texted back that she was going to stay in the city and deal with a vendor problem, and Elisa had not answered for a long time. And then she had written, "All right, Lena," and Lena had understood that Elisa knew that this was not about a vendor. She sat in her apartment with the contents of the envelope spread across her kitchen table. A newspaper clipping from a local paper dated November 7th, 2019. A page torn out of what looked like a trucking industry quarterly. A photocopied page from a coroner's report, partially redacted. The name and precinct of a state police investigator. A business card for Victor Hale's attorney, which Lena assumed was there in case she wanted to corroborate anything formally. And one photograph. It was a photograph of a warehouse. The warehouse was still on fire. A fire truck was in the foreground, small figures in black silhouette against the orange. And in the background, a single truck was visible, or what had been a truck, collapsed on itself. It was not a crime scene photo. It had been taken by someone who had been standing across the street and who had owned a good camera. There was a date and time stamp in the corner. It was grainy. It was terrible. She looked at it for a long time. Then she got up and she walked to her window, and she stood there with her forehead against the cold glass, and the man in 3B was playing his country music again. And Lena Ward, who had spent 6 months of the winter before this one crying in a walk-in freezer about a man who had left her a note. Lena Ward, who had caught a tray of falling champagne in a ballroom without thinking. Lena Ward, who was 1 week from the grand opening of a restaurant that bore her own name on a building she owned outright. Lena Ward made a call, not to Adrian, to the state police investigator whose name was on the envelope. She did not identify herself. She asked 2 questions. She asked whether a man named David Ruiz had died in a warehouse fire on Cotton Street on the night of November the 4th, 2019. The investigator said carefully that the fire had happened and that a body had been recovered and that the case remained open. She asked whether any arrests had ever been made. The investigator said, after a pause, that no arrests had ever been made and that no arrests were likely to be made, for reasons that he was not at liberty to discuss with a caller who had not given her name. She thanked him. She hung up. She sat down on her kitchen floor with her back against the cabinets, and she put her head in her hands. Her phone rang an hour later. It was Adrian. She let it ring. It stopped. It rang again. She let it ring again. It stopped. 20 seconds later, she got a text. "Lena, please." She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered. "Not tonight." The dots appeared, stopped, appeared. "Has someone spoken to you?" She did not answer. "Lena, has someone come to see you today?" She did not answer. For 30 seconds, the screen was still. Then, I am on my way. She sat on her kitchen floor. She thought about whether to move. She did not move. She sat there with her phone in her hand and she read his last 3 words over and over, and outside on the street she heard, eventually, the soft specific sound of a car she had come to know. A long black car that did not belong on her block, and a car door, and footsteps on her stoop, and the buzzer of her apartment. She got up. She walked to the door. She pressed the button. She did not say anything into the intercom. She could hear through the crackle him breathing. He could hear her too. Neither of them spoke. After a few seconds, she pressed the button that unlocked the front door downstairs, and she heard the little electrical click of it, and she heard the door of her building open, and she heard his footsteps on the stairs. 4 flights. He did not hurry. He came up the stairs at an ordinary pace, a man climbing 4 flights of stairs in an old walk-up, and when he got to her landing, he stopped, and he waited, and Lena opened her door. He was standing on her welcome mat in a black coat that cost more than her rent, with his hands at his sides, and his hair was a little wind-blown, and his face was the face she had not yet seen him wear. "Who came to see you?" he said. "A man named Victor Hale." She had not known what she was going to do until she saw his face when she said the name. She had thought, sitting on her kitchen floor, that there were several possible ways this conversation could go. There was the way where she accused him and he lied, and she knew he was lying. There was the way where she accused him and he told her the truth, and she could not live with it. There was the way where she did not accuse him at all, and she let him hold her, and she put the envelope in the back of a drawer, and she spent the rest of her life pretending she had never opened it. She had not been prepared for the way where he flinched. It was a very small flinch, a muscle at his jaw, a quick closing and opening of his eyes. That was all. It was enough. "Come in," Lena said. "Sit down at my kitchen table." Lena: "Sit down at my kitchen table, Adrian, because I have spread some things out on it, and I would like you to look at them. And then I would like you to tell me, with your own mouth, which of them are true and which of them are not. And I would like you to do it without the patience, without the pauses, without the choosing of words. I don't want the Adrian Voss I have been eating dinner with. I want the one my friend Keisha is scared of. Can you do that for me?" He came in. He took off his coat. He hung it on the back of a chair. He sat down at her kitchen table. He looked at the photograph first, then the newspaper clipping, then the coroner's report. He looked at each piece of paper for a long time, and he did not touch any of them. And Lena stood across the table from him with her hands gripping the back of the opposite chair, and her knuckles were white. He looked up. "All of it is true," he said. She closed her eyes. She had not known, until she heard him say it, that some part of her had still been hoping he would say it was not. "You killed him." "No, Adrian, I did not kill him. I want to be precise. I did not light the fire. I did not touch him. I was not there. But a man who worked for me at the time arranged it, and he arranged it with my money, and he did not ask my permission because he did not have to, because by that point in my life I had made it clear to everyone who worked for me that a certain kind of problem was not to be brought to me for explicit instructions. He did what he did because he was being paid to do a job, and his job was to make certain problems not be problems anymore. When Mr. Ruiz became a problem, he was no longer a problem. I did not ask how. I did not want to know how. I found out how 4 months later because the man who had done it was arrested for an unrelated matter and began negotiating with prosecutors, and I had to have him. I had to have the situation managed. None of this is an excuse. I am telling you the facts because you asked for them. You had the man managed." "Yes." "What does that mean?" "Lena, what does that mean?" "It means he is alive. He is in a federal facility in Kentucky. He will be there for another 19 years. I arranged, through intermediaries, for his family to receive regular payments during that time, in exchange for his understanding that he would not speak about certain matters. He has understood. He is 7 years into his sentence. His family has 2 children in college. That is what it means." Lena's hands on the back of the chair were shaking. She looked down at them. She made them stop. "The kitchen you built me," she said, "at the house on the bluff. 18 months ago." "Yes." 18 months before you met me." "Yes." "That's 2 years ago, Adrian. That is almost exactly 1 year after this." "Yes." You built a kitchen for a woman you hadn't met yet, 1 year after you had a man killed. Yes. Why? He was silent for a long moment. He looked at the photograph on the table. He looked away from it. He looked at her, and his face was open in a way it had not been open before. And Lena saw, finally, what he had looked like at 20, before the face had become what it was now, and she understood that the boy at 20 was still in there, and that the boy at 20 had been the one who had made the kitchen. Because after Mr. Ruiz, Adrian said, I understood that I had become a man I was not going to be able to live with unless I began, very deliberately, to build things that did not have that in them. I could not undo what had happened. I could not give him back to his family. I tried, Lena. I have paid his wife every year since. Not as compensation. She does not know the money is for me. She will never know. I paid for his daughter's wedding. I paid for his son's degree. I have spent more money on that family than I spent buying the company, and it does not balance anything, because nothing balances it. And I understood, 8 months after the fire, that I was going to keep being what I was, and that the only way I was going to survive being what I was to build, in private, the kind of thing that a better man would have built. A kitchen for a woman I had not met yet, a house that my mother had wanted to live in, a scholarship for culinary students at the school I noticed you had attended, which I endowed in her name the year after she died, and which you received $4,000 from in your second year, though you do not know that, because the award letter does not say so. Those are the things I build, Lena. I build them because I am not a good man, and I know I am not. And they are the closest thing I have to telling the truth about myself. Lena pulled the chair out. She sat down. Her knees had started to give out on her. Adrian. Yes. The restaurant. What about it? Did I what? Did you have anyone harmed for the restaurant? Did anyone get hurt for the building or for the contractor or for the... No. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. No one was harmed. The old owner of that building was a 73-year-old man named Mr. Abernathy, who wanted to retire to South Carolina to live near his granddaughter. And he sold me his building for the asking price because I paid the asking price in cash and closed in 11 days. The contractor was paid his full bid. The tile man was paid his full bid. The woman who restored the tin ceiling is a friend of Marta's sister, and she cried when I paid her because she had been trying to pay off her husband's medical debt for 9 years, and I paid her twice what she asked. No one was harmed, Lena. I swear to you on the one thing I have sworn on in the last 10 years, which is my daughter. No one was harmed. Mummed. She put her face in her hands. She sat like that for a long time. He did not touch her. He did not move across the table. He did not reach for her. He sat in his chair with his own hands folded on the table in front of him. And he waited. The way he had waited at the Atherton, and Lena, who had thought 6 months ago that his patience was the most frightening thing about him, understood now that his patience was the most honest thing about him. He was letting her decide again. He had let her decide every single time, and he was letting her decide now. I have to ask you something, she said through her hands. Anything. Will you ever do it again? He did not answer right away. She looked up. Adrian, will you ever have someone killed again? I don't know. That is not... Lena, you told me not to choose my words. Yes, so I am telling you that I do not know. I have not had it happen since. I have made decisions in the last 5 years that have made it not necessary. I have restructured how I work. I have built the parts of my business that require that kind of thing out of my business. I am as close to a man who will not need to do it again as I know how to be. But I am not that man yet, and I'm not going to lie to you and say that I am. If a thing happens someday that is bigger than me, I do not know what I will do. I am telling you I do not know because you told me not to lie, and because you deserve to know that I do not know. She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time. The man in 3B downstairs had put on a new song. It was the same song about a train. He played it a lot. It was the only song she had ever heard through her floor that he played twice in a night. A woman was singing about a train that wasn't coming back. Go home, Adrian. He did not move. Please. Please go home. I can't do this with you here. I need to be in my own apartment tonight. I need to think, please. Do you want me to come back? I don't know. All right. He stood up. He put on his coat. He went to the door. At the door, he stopped, and he did not turn around, and he said to the door frame, "The building is yours, no matter what you decide. If you never open the restaurant, it is still yours. If you open it and you never speak to me again, it is still yours. I arranged all of that months ago. I did not want you to be in a position where the decision you made depended on a building. Go home, Adrian." He went home. The door clicked shut behind him. Lena sat at her kitchen table with the photograph of a burning warehouse in front of her, and the phone in her pocket did not ring, and the song about the train played twice more, and the city outside her window kept being the city it was. And somewhere in it was a man who had, in the last 10 years, killed one person and built a kitchen and fathered a daughter he only saw twice a year, and who had just walked out of her apartment because she had asked him to. She did not cry. She had thought she would. She did not. She sat at the table for almost an hour, and then she gathered up all the papers and she put them back in the envelope, and she put the envelope in the bottom of the drawer with Noah's note and the cream-colored card from the night of the gala, and she closed the drawer and she went to bed. She lay in the dark for a long time. Around 3 in the morning, she opened her eyes and she said out loud to the ceiling, "I know what he is." The ceiling did not answer. "I know what he is," she said again. "And I know what I am, and I know what I am going to do." She closed her eyes. She slept. She woke at 6:15 and she knew what she was going to do before her feet touched the floor. It was Wednesday. The restaurant was supposed to open on Saturday. She had 4 days. She had 4 days to decide between now and the first service whether she was going to stand at the pass in a white coat with her own name over the door and cook food for 120 people while knowing what she now knew, or whether she was going to lock the door of the building he had given her and get on a bus back to Pittsburgh and sleep in her mother's guest room for a month until she figured out how to be a person again. She made coffee. She drank it at the window. The man in 3B was quiet for once. She watched the sky turn from gray to the pale blue. It got on spring mornings when the wind was from the west, and she thought about her mother, and she thought about David Ruiz, whose face she did not know and would never know. And she thought about the 11-year-old girl in a diner booth with a chocolate milkshake, and she thought about her own face in the mirror at 23, third in her class, the bouillabaisse cooling on the stainless steel in front of her while her instructor tasted it with his eyes closed. Then she went to work. She did not call Adrian. He did not call her. By noon, she had arranged all the napkins in the dining room and broken down 2 cases of tomatoes for a sauce she was going to test, and her hands had stopped shaking, and Keisha had come in at 11 and said nothing and put on an apron and started counting wine glasses again. And the silence between them was the kind of silence that meant Keisha was waiting to be told and was not going to ask. At 3 o'clock, Lena looked up from her cutting board and said, "I need you to help me with something tonight, Keisha." "What?" "I need you to come with me to meet somebody." "Who?" "The man who came in here yesterday, Victor Hale." Keisha set down the glass she was polishing. "Lena, I know." "Lena, no. I'm not asking. I'm telling you what I'm doing, and I'm telling you I want a witness. And I'm asking you, as my friend, and as the woman who is running the front of my house, whether you will be that witness." "Why?" "Because I need to know what he wants." "He told you what he wants. He wants you to leave Adrian. He wants you to walk out of this building and burn Adrian's name in the papers and ruin him." "No." "No? That's not what he wants. If that was what he wanted, he would have gone to a reporter. He didn't. He came to me, alone, with photocopies. He wanted me to know the story, Keisha, but he did not want me to take it anywhere, which means he wants something else from me, and I need to know what it is, because as long as I don't know what it is, I cannot make any decision about any part of my life." "Lena, honey, you know he's trying to get you to do something for him." "Yes, and whatever he wants you to do, it is worse than what Adrian has already done." "Probably. So why are we going?" "Because if I am going to spend the rest of my life next to a man with Adrian's history, then I do not get to be a woman who is afraid of people like Victor Hale. I do not get to sit in my kitchen and be handled. I need to sit across a table from him, and I need to look him in the face, and I need to make him tell me, in front of another person, what he actually came here to get. That is the only way I will know what I am doing." Keisha looked at her for a long time. Then Keisha walked into the kitchen and came back out with a small black object in her hand. She set it on the bar. It was a pepper spray canister, the good kind, the kind with a safety and a hand strap and a label in a language Lena did not read. "We're taking this," Keisha said, "and I am driving. And if he touches either one of us, I am going to personally end his life, and Adrian can clean up after me, because that is what he is good at. Okay? And Lena?" "What? After tonight, whatever happens, you tell me the whole thing. All of it. The man in the warehouse. The deed on this building. The kitchen at the beach house. All of it. Because if I am going to be the person standing at the front door of Ward's next Saturday night, I'm going to know what I am standing in front of. I'm not doing this blind." "Okay, Keisha." "Tonight." "Tonight." Keisha nodded once. She picked the pepper spray back up and put it in her apron pocket, and she went back to the wine glasses, and Lena went back to her tomatoes. The number for Victor Hale's attorney was on one of the business cards in the envelope. Lena called it from the back office at 4 o'clock. She said her name. The receptionist put her on hold for exactly 11 seconds. The attorney came on the line and asked her politely where and when she would like to meet. "Tonight," Lena said. 7 o'clock. A public place. I choose the place." "Of course, Ms. Ward. There is a diner on the corner of 15th and Carmine Street, the one with the blue awning. I know it. I will be there at 7. I will be with my friend. She will be sitting at the counter, not at the table, because I don't want Mr. Hale to feel crowded. But she will be there, and she will see us. And she has a cell phone." "Understood, Miss Ward. Mr. Hale will be there at 7. He will come alone." "Thank you." "Miss Ward?" "Yes." The attorney's voice was not the voice of a man who was running a trap. It was the voice of a tired man who had been in rooms with Victor Hale for a long time and who was not sure anymore what he was helping build. "You are doing a brave thing," the attorney said. "I want you to know that I have counseled Mr. Hale not to do what he is doing. I have counseled him for other reasons than concern for you, but I have counseled him. If you come tonight and you hear him out and you decide that you are not interested, he will not press you. He will not send anyone else. I will see to that personally. You have my word, for whatever my word is worth to you." "Thank you," Lena said. She hung up. The diner had been on that corner since before Lena was born. It had a long counter with chrome trim and red vinyl stools and booths along the window with red vinyl seats, and the coffee was bad, and the pie was good, and a woman named Dolores had been behind the counter for 27 years. Lena had eaten there at least once a week since she had moved to the city. It was the kind of place where people went when they did not want to perform, and Lena had chosen it on purpose, because she was tired of rooms where men performed. Victor Hale was already in the corner booth when they walked in at 6:55. He stood up when he saw her. He did not offer his hand. He gestured to the seat across from him, and Lena slid in, and Keisha walked past the booth without looking at him and took a stool at the counter 12 feet away and ordered a cup of coffee in a voice that was very steady. Dolores came over with her pot. She poured Lena a cup without asking. She looked at Victor Hale the way she looked at anyone she did not recognize, with a flat professional pleasantness, and she asked him what he wanted, and he said coffee, and she poured it, and she went away. "Ms. Ward." "Mr. Hale." "Thank you for calling." "Don't thank me yet. I'm going to tell you how this is going to go. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You are going to answer them. If you lie to me, or if you try to charm me, or if you give me a speech about how you are worried about my well-being, I'm going to stand up and walk out, and I am never going to speak to you again, and you are going to have wasted the one chance you had with me. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. First question. What do you actually want from me?" He did not flinch. He took a sip of his coffee. He set the cup down. He folded his hands on the table. He was wearing a different suit than the day before, gray this time instead of charcoal, and without the theater of the empty restaurant around him, he looked smaller than he had seemed. Just a tired man in his 50s with silver at his temples, having coffee in a diner. "I want you to wear something," he said. "A wire." "Yes." Once. At one specific meeting, which Adrian has already scheduled for a week from Thursday, in a private room at a club called the Calvert. He meets there with 4 other men every quarter. Those meetings are the only meetings in Adrian's life, in which he is not alone with his own people. He has been having those meetings for 11 years. No one outside the 5 men has ever been in one. If there is ever going to be a conversation that matters, that is where it will be. You are the only person in his life who has a plausible reason to be near that room at that hour, and you are the first person he has brought into his life in a decade who would be a reason for the conversation to happen differently. One meeting, one evening, something small, clipped inside a bracelet, no electronics on you that would not be on you normally. My attorney would arrange it. No law enforcement would ever know your name. What you heard or did not hear would be used to build a case against someone who is not Adrian. What? Not Adrian? Not Adrian. Who then? A man named Henrik Solberg. The 5 men who meet at the Calvert. Mr. Solberg is one of them. Mr. Solberg has spent 6 years doing things in this city that have hurt a great many people and a very specific small number of children, Miss Ward. I am not telling you the details. You do not want to know the details. I have been trying, in my own way, to stop Mr. Solberg for 4 years. I cannot get near him. Adrian can. Adrian has not, because Adrian is cautious, and Adrian does not take risks. If I had Adrian himself in a room, I would ask Adrian. I do not have Adrian. I have you because you are new, and because the man in Mr. Solberg is afraid of nothing, least of all new women. You would sit at dinner with Adrian in the adjoining room. You would excuse yourself once. You would stand for 90 seconds in a hallway near a door. That is all. I would have what I need. Adrian would never know. Mr. Solberg would be arrested within the month. And in exchange, the envelope I gave you becomes nothing. No one else sees it. There are no other envelopes. Your building is yours. Your restaurant is yours. Your life is yours. You and Adrian continue to do whatever it is you are doing. I never contact you again. My attorney never contacts you again. No one in my circle contacts you again. That is the exchange? You give me 90 seconds in a hallway, I give you the rest of your life back. Lena looked at him for a long moment. She took a sip of her own coffee. Dolores had poured it too hot, the way she always did. It burned the roof of her mouth, and she was grateful for it because it gave her face something to do. Second question, she said, why are you really doing this? I told you. You told me about Mr. Solberg. I believe you about Mr. Solberg. I do not believe you are doing any of this because of Mr. Solberg. You do not walk into a woman's restaurant the day before her opening with photocopies of a 5-year-old crime to save children from a man named Solberg. So I'm asking you again, why are you really doing this? Victor Hale looked at her. He looked at her for a longer beat than she had expected. His eyes were not the eyes of a man who was about to lie. They were the eyes of a man who had just understood that the woman across the table was smarter than he had calculated her to be, and who was adjusting quickly to a new set of numbers. Because Adrian Voss and I are the same age, he said. Because we went to the same school 24 years ago, though we did not know each other then. Because the business I am in and the business he is in used to be the same business, and we were going to do it together, and then we did not, because he was better at it than I was, and his people were better than my people. And the money went to him, and it did not come back. Because for 21 years I have watched him become the man I intended to be, and I am at the end of my career, Ms. Ward, and I do not have very much to leave behind me, and there is one thing I would like to finish before I go, which is to take a piece of him. Not all of him. I am not stupid. One piece. Mr. Solberg is a piece of him, because Mr. Solberg's arrest would cost Adrian approximately $41 million in liquidity over a 22-month period. And that is not a number he would recover from without becoming someone smaller than he is now. That is the honest answer. I am telling it to you because I respect you. I did not, at the beginning of this meeting. I do now. I am telling you because you asked. Son. Thank you, Lena said. Third question. Yes. How long have you been watching me? 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Since we became aware that Adrian had begun spending time with a woman whose name had not appeared on any of his public calendars. It took us 3 weeks to establish that you were not a plant, and not a relative of his, and not anyone we had ever seen before. It took us another 2 to identify the restaurant and the deed. I contacted you the day after the deed cleared, because a woman who has just been given a building is at a particular moment in her life where she is balancing what she has been given against what she is being asked to ignore, and that is the moment in which an envelope like mine lands hardest. I am a professional, Ms. Ward. I am sorry. Don't be sorry. I am sorry anyway. Fourth question. Yes. If I say no to your offer tonight, if I stand up right now and I walk out of this diner and I go back to the restaurant and I open it on Saturday night and I never speak to you again, what happens to me? Victor Hale did not answer right away. He looked out the window. A bus was going past. It was blue and rattling and had a dent in its side panel. He watched the bus until it had cleared the frame of the window, and then he looked back at her. Nothing happens to you, Tiam, he said. I have an attorney sitting in a car 3 blocks from here, and if you walk out of this diner without agreeing, he will take the file on you and he will burn it tonight, physically, in his fireplace. I have watched him do it before. Adrian will probably figure out that I came to see you, because Adrian figures most things out, and Adrian will probably do something about me, though I do not think it will be a warehouse. Adrian has grown careful in his old age. If he wanted me dead, I would have been dead years ago. He will do something financial. I am prepared for it. I have been prepared for it. That is not your problem. That is the thing I am risking by having come to you in the first place. Your answer tonight does not change any of it. I am not threatening you, Ms. Ward. I am genuinely telling you that you are free. 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 Lena looked down at her coffee. She thought about all the ways she had been told in the last 6 months that she was free. Marta, in the corridor at the gala. Elisa, on the drive to the coast. Adrian, in her kitchen, telling her that if she never opened the restaurant, the building was hers anyway. And now Victor Hale, in a diner on 15th and Carmine, telling her that she was free to walk out. They had all been telling her the truth. And they had all been telling her a particular kind of truth that only people who have power over you ever say. You are free. It was not a statement a person made to someone they did not have power over. It was a statement that was a permission, and a permission was itself a kind of leash, because the person who gave it was by definition the person who could take it back. She was tired, suddenly, of being free. She wanted to be the person who gave the permission. Mr. Hale. Yes. I'm not going to wear a wire for you. He did not react. I am not going to do it because I do not believe that 90 seconds in a hallway ends with Mr. Solberg arrested. I believe 90 seconds in a hallway ends with 90 more seconds in another hallway, and 90 more after that, and eventually with me testifying before a grand jury, at which point my name is in a court filing that is a matter of public record, at which point I am no longer a woman who owns a restaurant on Pearl Street. I am a woman who is a witness, and my restaurant is a courthouse, and my dining room is an empty room, and Keisha over there is unemployed, and my mother in Pittsburgh is reading about me on a website. I am not doing any of that. Not for $41 million of Adrian's money. Not for Mr. Solberg's children. Not for you. Ms. Ward, I am not finished. He closed his mouth. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to go back to my restaurant tonight. I'm going to open it on Saturday. I'm going to cook food for the people who come through the door, and I am going to do it very well because I happen to be very good at it. I am going to continue seeing Adrian Voss because I love him, and because he told me the truth about himself when I asked him to, which is more than any other man has ever done for me. I am going to live with what he has done. I am not going to pretend he did not do it. I am going to live with it in the way people live with the things they have chosen to live with, which is carefully. Do you understand so far? Yes. Here's the part you should pay attention to. If Mr. Solberg is the monster you say he is, then I think you should keep trying to stop him, Mr. Hale. I do. I am not a woman who thinks bad things should happen to children, but you're going to stop him without me, and you are going to stop him without Adrian, and you are going to stop him without trying to make me a lever against the man I sleep with. Because if you try that again, or if you send anyone else to try that again, or if I find out that my mother in Pittsburgh has been visited by anyone asking questions about me, I'm going to do something I have been thinking about for the last 24 hours, which is, I'm going to take that envelope you gave me, and I am going to walk it into the office of the Attorney General of this state personally, and I am going to say, my name is Lena Marie Ward, and I was the girlfriend of Adrian Voss, and this is a thing that he did in 2019, And this other thing is a thing that Victor Hale tried to do to me in May of this year. And I would like to tell you about both of them, on the record, in exchange for nothing at all, because I'm tired. And then I'm going to go home, and I'm going to let the two of you destroy each other in whatever way that sets in motion. And I'm going to open my restaurant on Pearl Street, and I am going to keep cooking. Because the thing you and Adrian have both misunderstood about me, Mr. Hale, is that the restaurant is not leverage. It was never leverage. I would cook in a gas station if I had to, and I have. The restaurant is a gift, and I took it, and I'm grateful, but I would give it back tomorrow if the price of keeping it was being a thing that two old men used on each other. Do you hear me? I'm position that. Victor Hale was quiet for a long time. Then he did something Lena had not expected. He smiled. It was not his practiced smile. It was a small, tired, real smile, and it was the first expression of his she had seen that she believed. Ms. Ward, he said, I am 80% sorry I ever walked into your restaurant. Only 80? The other 20% is professional respect. I am not going to apologize for that part. You will understand when you are my age. I may not be your age for a while. No, you may not. He pushed his coffee cup away. He took out his wallet. He laid a $20 bill on the table under his saucer. You will not hear from me again. You will not hear from anyone on my behalf. The envelope is closed. The file will be burned tonight. I give you my word, and I give you Mr. Ashford's word, which is worth more than mine. He stood up. Good luck with your opening, Miss Ward. I have been told the chef is gifted. He walked out of the diner. Through the window, Lena watched him cross Carmine Street in the long light of a late spring evening, and she watched him get into a dark green sedan that was waiting for him, and she watched the sedan pull away. She did not move for a long time. Keisha slid into the seat across from her. Did that just happen? I think so. Lena, that was... I know. I am never doing anything like that again. Ever. In my life. I almost threw up twice. I was holding that pepper spray so hard I have cramps in my fingers. Look at my fingers. Keisha, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be quiet. I'm going to finish your coffee because you are not going to drink it, and then we are going to walk back to the restaurant, and you are going to tell me everything the way you promised. And I am going to listen, and I am not going to interrupt. And at the end, I am going to tell you one thing. What one thing? You will see. Tut. They walked back to Pearl Street in the long blue dusk. Lena talked. Keisha did not interrupt. Lena told her the whole of it. The envelope, the photograph, the warehouse, the scholarship at the culinary school, the kitchen built for a woman who had not been met yet, the 11-year-old girl in a diner booth. She told her about Elisa's son in Ohio. She told her about Marta's voice in the corridor. She told her about the night Adrian had sat at her kitchen table and said all of it is true, and about the moment she had understood that he was the first person in her life who had not lied to her when it would have been easier to lie. When she was done, they were standing in front of the restaurant. The lights were off inside. The brass muntined window caught the last of the sunset on Pearl Street, red and orange, and the tin ceiling was just barely visible through the glass. Keisha unlocked the front door. She held it open. One thing, Lena said. One thing. Keisha stepped into the dark of the dining room, and she turned around and she looked at Lena across the threshold. You are a woman who has decided to live a complicated life. That is a choice a lot of women make, and most of them regret it because they made it without knowing it was a choice. You are making it knowing. That is the only difference that matters, Lena. Everything else is weather. Now come inside and help me set up for tomorrow, because we are open on Saturday, whether you are in love with a murderer or not. Keisha. What? I love you. I love you too, Lena. Now get inside. She called Adrian from the back office at 10:30 that night. He picked up on the first ring. Lena. I'm okay. Are you? I am. Adrian, I'm okay. I need you to come over. Not tonight. Tomorrow. Come to the restaurant tomorrow morning at 11. Bring breakfast. Come alone. I want to show you something. Show me what? Come tomorrow. All right. Adrian. Yes. I'm all right. There was a very long pause on the other end of the line. All right, Lena. Good night. Good night. He came at 11 the next morning. He came alone, on foot, which surprised her. He was carrying a paper bag from a bakery 2 neighborhoods away, the kind of bakery a man has to get to by walking through the city at an hour when the streets are full of ordinary people. And Lena stood in the middle of her empty restaurant and watched him come through the door, and she understood as soon as she saw him that he had not slept either. He set the bag down on the bar. He did not try to touch her. "Lena, come with me." She led him through the dining room, past the pass, into the kitchen. She turned on the lights. The kitchen at Ward's was not the kitchen at the house on the bluff. It was smaller, and it had been assembled out of what the old dry cleaners had left behind, and what Lena could afford to add on top of it, and the ventilation was not as good and the floor was not the right rubber. But it was hers, and it was clean, and it was ready, and the meat stations had been laid out by a cook who was 5'7" because she was the cook and she had laid them out herself. Adrian stopped in the middle of the room. He looked around. He did not say anything for a while. "Adrian?" "Yes." "I met Victor Hale last night." He went still in the way that she had come to know, the way that meant he was choosing not to react until he had heard everything. "I met him in a diner. Keisha came with me. I told him no. I told him I was not going to do what he asked. I told him that if he came near me or anyone in my life again, I was going to take his envelope to the Attorney General with my own name attached to it, and I was going to let the two of you destroy each other." He left. He said I would not hear from him again. I believe him. I'm telling you all of this now because I want you to know it, and because I do not want you to find out through your people, and because I do not want you to do anything to him on my behalf. I handled it. It is handled. You are not going to retaliate. You are not going to manage it. You are not going to arrange anything. Do you understand me? Adrian did not speak for a long time. He walked slowly to the nearest prep table. He put his hands on it, flat. He bowed his head just a little. Lena could not see his face. "Adrian." "Yes." "Did you hear me?" "Yes." "Tell me you are not going to do anything." "I'm not." "Tell me again." "Lena, I'm not going to do anything. I swear to you. I swear on my daughter. I'm not going to touch Victor Hale. I'm not going to touch his attorney. I'm not going to touch anyone in his office or his family. I'm going to let him live. If you say that is what you want, that is what I'm going to do, for as long as you want it, and past that." "Good." "Lena." "Yes." He lifted his head. "You told him no." "Yes." "Why?" "Because he asked me to be a weapon, and I am not a weapon. I am a cook. And because you told me the truth the other night when it would have cost you less to lie, and a man who does that deserves, in my opinion, one chance to keep being the man who does that. And because I have been a small, invisible woman my whole life, Adrian, and everyone who has had power over me, my father, Noah, Chef Marco in some ways, and yes, you, has been a person who decided one way or another how visible I got to be. And I am done with that. Last night in a diner, I stopped being a small, invisible woman. I decided. Me. And the thing I decided was that I wanted this kitchen, and I wanted the restaurant, and I wanted you. Not all of you, the parts of you that I can live with, the parts of you that can live here, in this room, in this city, in my life. The other parts of you, the parts that light warehouses on fire, the parts that manage federal informants, the parts that live in rooms at the Calvert with men like Solberg, those parts can live somewhere else. I am not going to pretend they don't exist. I am not going to be the kind of woman who tells herself a story. But they are going to live in a separate room, Adrian, and you are not going to bring them home. Not to this kitchen, not to the house on the bluff, not to any room that has me in it. Can you do that? He looked at her for a very long time. And then he did something she had not seen him do in 6 months of knowing him. He sat down. He pulled out one of the low prep stools from under the table, and he sat down on it, heavily, the way a man sits when his knees have not asked his permission to stop holding him up. And he put his elbows on his thighs, and he put his hands together in front of his mouth, and he closed his eyes. "Yes," he said through his hands. "Adrian." "Yes, Lena. Look at me." He looked at her. His eyes were not dry. They were not wet, either. They were somewhere in between, the way eyes get when a person is refusing a thing by force of habit, and Lena saw in them for the first time the boy at 20, all the way out now, not hidden behind the face that had been built on top of him. And she understood that it was the boy she had fallen in love with, and that the boy had been waiting for 31 years for someone to sit him down in a kitchen and tell him that he did not have to carry all of it into every room. I'm going to do what you just said, Adrian said. I have wanted someone to ask that of me for a long time. I did not know how to ask for it. You are not going to regret having said it. Okay? I love you. I know. I have not said it before. I wanted to say it when you could hear it. I know, Adrian. I love you too. Eat your breakfast. We open in 3 days. Ward's opened on a Saturday night in late May. It was not a perfect opening. A cook in the pantry fell and sprained her wrist in the second hour. The dishwasher jammed at 9:40, and Tomas had to reach into it with a wire hanger in a way that would have gotten him fired at any other kitchen in the city. 2 of Lena's wine glasses broke. A food critic from a local paper came in without a reservation and sat at the bar and ate 2 courses and left without leaving a note. And Keisha thought he was going to write something unkind, and Lena thought he was going to write something kind, and neither of them would know which one of them was right for another 11 days. It was not a perfect opening. It was a very good opening. By the end of the night, 117 people had eaten in Lena Ward's dining room, and by the end of that first month, Ward's had a 3-week waiting list for Friday and Saturday reservations, and by the end of the summer, the critic had been right, and Keisha had been wrong, and the review had been in the paper, and a woman had called on a Tuesday morning to ask if Ms. Ward might be available for a photograph for a magazine, and Lena had said, no, thank you. She did not want her picture in a magazine, and the woman had hung up, and an hour later Marta had called and had said very gently, Lena, you might reconsider. It will be good for the restaurant. And Lena had reconsidered, and she had sat for the photograph, and the photograph had been good. It did not all go smoothly. It never does. There were nights, that first year, when she sat in the back office at 1 in the morning, and she thought about Mr. Ruiz, and about the photograph in the envelope, and about what it meant that she was building a life on top of a man who had done that thing once, and who might, in a worse world than the one they had managed to make, do it again. She did not stop thinking about it. She had told Keisha in the diner that she was going to live with it carefully, and living with a thing carefully was not the same as making peace with it. She and Adrian had a fight in September that lasted 4 days, which she would not talk about afterward, and which Keisha would later say was when Lena stopped being a girl who had been chosen and started being a woman who was choosing. They had another fight in November. They had a worse one the following spring, when Lena asked a question about the man in the federal facility in Kentucky, and Adrian answered it, and Lena did not speak to him for a week. He did not come looking for her during that week. He waited. He waited in the way he had waited in the corridor at the gala, and at the table at the Atherton, and in the doorway of the kitchen at the house on the bluff. At the end of the week, Lena got in a cab, and she went to his tower, and she walked past his assistant without speaking, and she went into his office, and she shut the door, and they did not come out for 2 hours. What they said to each other in there, neither of them would ever tell anyone. Nora came to dinner at Ward's for the first time on her 12th birthday. Her mother came too. Lena cooked for them personally. She made a chocolate cake for Nora with fresh raspberries on top, and she wrote happy birthday, Nora on the plate and melted chocolate with a toothpick, and Nora looked at the plate and said, that's a good N. Did you practice it? I practiced it for 20 minutes. Why, Tessie? Because I wanted it to be right. Nora looked at Lena across the plate for a long second, in a way that reminded Lena, very briefly and very strongly, of Adrian looking at her across a candle at the Atherton. Okay, Nora said. It was not a grand moment. Nora did not hug her. Nora's mother did not cry. But something had been established across a chocolate cake on a Wednesday night in July that was not going to be unestablished. Lena's own mother came up from Pittsburgh for the first anniversary of the restaurant. Lena had not told her mother the whole story. She had told her enough. Her mother met Adrian in the dining room on a Saturday afternoon before service, and her mother looked at Adrian the way mothers look at men, and Adrian took her mother's hand in both of his, and he said, very quietly, Mrs. Ward, I know what you've heard. I would like to earn the right, over a long time, to prove that some of it is wrong. That is all I am going to say today. And Lena's mother, who had been planning a speech in the car all the way from Pittsburgh, had not delivered her speech. She had gone quiet. She had eaten her daughter's food. She had, at the end of the night, in the back of a taxi, said to Lena, he is not what I wanted for you, but he looks at you the way your father never looked at me, and I do not know what to do with that, Lena. I really don't. And Lena had said, me either, Mom, and that had been the end of it, and the beginning of a different thing, There were whole years after that. There were Novembers and Marches and the long, flat middle of Julys. There were staff fights and a hire who stole and a health inspection that went poorly and a second restaurant that Lena thought about opening and then decided not to open because she did not want to be a woman who ran two restaurants. She wanted to be a woman who ran one very well. There were weekends at the house on the bluff when she and Adrian did not say much at all and sat on the couch and read. And there were weekends when they argued about the news and went to bed angry and woke up less angry. There were nights when she watched him sleep and thought, I do not know who you are entirely, and I am never going to know, and that is what I signed. And there were mornings when he watched her in the kitchen at the bluff. She did use it eventually, once, twice, then regularly. And she caught him looking at her with an expression he did not know he was making, which was the expression of a man who had built a room 18 months before he met her, and who could not, even years later, quite believe that the woman using it was real. Lena was not a small, invisible woman anymore. She had not been from the moment she had caught that tray. But the thing she learned over the years that followed was that becoming visible was not a magic trick a man in a tuxedo had performed on her in a ballroom. It was something she had done. It was something she had continued to do every time she had chosen, in the corridor with Marta, in Adrian's kitchen, in a diner with Victor Hale, to be the person who decided. A man had seen her across a crowded room once, and the world had cracked open. That was the story everyone who came to the restaurant thought they knew, because it was the kind of story the magazines wanted to tell. It was true, in its way. But it was not the story Lena Ward told herself, at the end of a shift, standing alone in her kitchen with the lights low and the pass wiped down and a dish towel over her shoulder. The story she told herself was shorter. It was that a woman with $93 in her checking account and a borrowed dress had walked into a room she had not belonged in, and had thought about leaving and had been asked to stay, and had stayed, and had then, over the long, hard, careful years that followed, learned the difference between being kept and being home. She had chosen to stay because she had come to understand that she was allowed to choose. And once she had understood that, no one, not Adrian, not Victor Hale, not the ghosts of every man who had ever tried to tell her what she was, no one was ever going to be able to take that understanding out of her again. That was what she had taken in the end from the whole of it. Not the building, not the kitchen, not the man, the understanding. And on the night she stood at the door of her own restaurant on the 5th anniversary of its opening, with Adrian Voss beside her in a cream-colored sweater and a pair of dark trousers, watching the people of the city come down Pearl Street toward a door with her name over it. On that night, when a young woman at the end of the line tripped on the curb and caught herself on the arm of a stranger and laughed in embarrassment and looked up to see Lena watching her from the doorway. Lena raised her glass to the young woman across the sidewalk in a small private salute, and the young woman did not understand what the salute was for, and that was all right. The young woman did not need to understand yet. She would, one day. They all did, eventually.